right, I'll call the Tuesday, April 19th meeting of the Weathersfield Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Since neither the vice chairman nor the clerk is here, I'll call the roll. I'm here. Vice Chairman Allard is not here. Clerk Hammer is not here. Jim Hughes is not here. George Oikel?
Here.
Tom Dean?
Here.
Tony Homicki?
Here.
Dave Edwards?
Here.
Mike Vieira is not here. Dave Drake is not here. Pete Limbruni?
I'm here.
Paul Thompson?
Here.
All right, and Denise Bradley. So we have, what is that, 5 regular members and 2 alternates, so everybody will be seated for tonight. We have 3 public hearing items, one of which is continued from the last meeting. The way the public hearings will work is the applicant will make a presentation. We'll have some questions from the commission. Following that, we'll open it up to members of the public who will have an opportunity to comment on the application. Following that, the applicant can come back up and respond to any public comment. There may be additional questions from the commission at that point. Depending on whether or not we have all the information that we feel we need to decide on the application, we may close the public hearing, deliberate and vote. If there are still significant open issues or things that we feel we need in order to be able to appropriately address the application, we may continue the hearing to our next meeting. If we do that, we will tell you the date and time of our next public hearing so that you'll be aware of that. Anyone who wants to come up and speak is welcome to do so. Just request that you identify yourself by name and address for the record when you do that. So the first item is 3.1, continuation of public hearing 2102-22Z. Frank Citino seeking subdivision in accordance with the Weathersfield zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, Article 2, for the creation of 3 lots at 248 Knott Street. And
Good
Mr.
evening.
Citino.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to apologize for our last meeting. I got a little ahead of myself, and for that I sincerely do apologize to everyone here and who's not here. With that said, I met with Derek on 2 separate occasions, and he provided a revised drawing today, which I brought in some larger versions, 7 of them. The last meeting we had, I had expressed the concern that I didn't want any monkey wrenches into the process. It's not a monkey wrench, it was a small challenge, and we resolved it. The town would like to revamp Wolcott and the Knott Street intersection. In order to do that, they'd like to take 15 feet of frontage on the Wolcott Street side. I have no problem with that. It amounts to about 400 square feet. The challenge that it presents is in the frontage. I no longer meet the frontage on Knott Street. So Derek and I met today, literally a 3-minute conversation. They're going to take 15 feet of the property to rework Wolcott Hill, make it more of a continuous flow. And in order to maintain the frontage, 60 and 60, we're going to give them a 5-foot sidewalk easement. They're going to take a total of 10 feet and then have a 5-foot sidewalk easement. So they had their 15, but legally speaking, we still have 60 and 60. Done deal. I have no problem with it. Not going to complicate the process. It really has no effect on the property. It's a large enough lot. It's 13,000 and change. We're still above 13,000 square feet on the corner lot. So with that said, the biggest issue that we had at our last meeting was drainage. And item number 8, and this is from Derek, the applicant has stated that all driveways will be constructed of pervious stone pavers behind the sidewalk and 2 6-foot diameter dry wells for each building shown on the plan are adequate size to minimize stormwater runoff leaving the site. However, revised note 15 on sheet 4 to state the dry well overflow pipes will be directed to the pervious areas to promote stormwater infiltration during severe storm events. The bottom line is, we're not increasing the runoff any way, shape, or form. A, we're installing the dry wells. B, we have the pervious parking areas. There is no blacktop. So that solves our biggest concern that we had at the last meeting. The rest of the items that Derek noted are minor corrections to the drawings. We're responsible for the sidewalks, et cetera, so there's nothing really major that's there. The other item I want to address is Lot 3, the most northern lot on Wilkett Hill Road. Mrs. DeBelle, I believe she was concerned about the parking adjoining her property. I have not spent the money to redo the drawings, but we can stipulate it tonight. I'm hoping to leave with an approval. We'll flip that house so that the parking area is on the right side of the house as opposed to the left side of the house. So the parking will not encroach on her in any way, shape, or form. Not worried about headlights, engines running if you warm your car in the morning. Most people don't you're supposed to, but. So we're going to flip that. That's doable. Other than that, I think all the issues are addressed, other than minor concerns. I know one of the statements made at the last meeting was, sometimes we have lists with numerous items that need to be addressed, and we can make an approval stipulated upon these items being addressed properly and accepted by the town engineer. So I really have nothing else to offer. I have that revised drawing. It shows the 15 feet that the town needs. I think that's it.
Thank you. And was I not like Nostradamus when I said we were going to get a long list of items?
Yes. Which is fine, yes.
Yeah, but you're fine with everything that's on this?
Yeah, the total, 6 minutes worth of conversation.
Okay. And just so that we're clear, when you talk about flipping the house and left and right, you mean moving the house to the north and the parking lot to the south?
We would take the house that's further north, shift it to the south, and take the parking, I apologize, take that house, shift it north. We'll maintain the required setback. It's 5, I think we have enough room to keep it 10. I don't want to go too close to the property line, so we have enough room there. Because the lot's 75 feet wide, the house is only 28 feet wide, so I have plenty of space. But we'll flip it, put the parking on the right side of the property versus the left.
Okay.
And that would be shown when we do the final, each house needs to have a survey. As I mentioned earlier, this entire process starts all over again, but an individualized basis for each lot.
Right. And I think just to clarify that you and I were on the same page last time, and maybe other people were either confused or catching up. Because of the frontages, lots 1 and 2 can only accommodate a single-family house, and lot 3
absolutely, yes.
is the only one that can accommodate a two-family.
What I'd like the board to understand, I make concessions because I am concerned with what I build, and I'm in the community. One of those lots is an existing 50-foot lot, and it's grandfathered. I can build in that 50-foot lot and sneak in two families. Or I can go 75 and still have 60 and put two families and a single family. I don't want that. That's too much. So I've made that concession, 1 2-family, 2 single families. No way, shape, or form will I build 2 2-families. And I'll stipulate to that. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have any questions for Mr. Citino? Peter?
Frank, just a quick question.
Yes.
When you flip the parking, you're going to maintain the same number of parking spaces, but just move them?
No, we need, for a 2-family, I believe the zoning requires 4. We're going to put 6.
So you're going to stick with 6? But
Most households have 2 cars. Someone's going to come and visit. There are 6 parking spaces. In the event someone has a party, you can always fit more than 6 cars in the parking lot that size, but we're going to go with 6 parking spaces.
which way are they going to be oriented?
So if you pull, I don't want the cars going up against the house, so you'll pull into the driveway and they'll park off to the right side of the property.
Right.
And for that middle house, we'll put some arborvitaes or what's the other one, hemlocks, some sort of shrubbery
Yeah,
in
no, I
between.
commend you on that change, because I think, that
It was
was an imposition, and I think you figured that out, and appreciate you doing that.
It was
I think
a
it'll be better
justifiable
for
concern.
everybody.
Thank you.
Anybody over here? Okay. Tom?
To some extent, I apologize. I hadn't noticed before until I was reviewing the documentation for, this meeting tonight. And the existing house
Yes.
was constructed in 1837, which is the
1800.
1800. Okay.
And
the
not only was it built in
documents indicate
1800, it was
constructed
built
in
with
1837.
material recycled from a house that was built earlier than that.
Well, given that fact, I'm concerned about the loss of an historic structure.
So I looked at the house, and because the house is perfectly situated on the lot for it to remain. There is no way where the devil comes from to save that house unless you want to give up your retirement account. That's how bad it is.
Okay. Has there been any contact with the state agency for historic preservation?
No.
And have you looked into the regulations as it relates to historic properties like this?
Yes.
And from
The,
your...
the state offers no funding, no financing in any way, shape, or form. So if the state's not willing to kick in, I have retirement coming up in a few years. I'm not looking to kick in either.
And have you researched, the issues with respect to, historic properties in terms of
Yes.
demolishing historic structures?
Yes.
And you see no
There are no issues.
legal impediment
No.
to what you're proposing?
It's outside the historical zone. It's outside the historical district in the town of Weathersfield, and the house is beyond repair.
Okay.
Excessively beyond repair.
Wonder if the town planner's office has any considerations, or have you looked at that issue with respect to historic properties?
I mean, in addition to what he's already explained in terms of the condition of the existing property, no.
And I take it the existing property is in very poor condition.
Beyond poor.
Yeah, I've gone past it on
Yeah.
numerous occasions.
No, outside it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
If you go inside, you'll find otherwise. The foundation is deteriorating. The sill plates are gone. The joists are infested with termites and deteriorated. The structure itself, it would be condemned if I tried to occupy that property. There's no way, shape, or form. Structurally, it's not sound.
and in your comments, in your presentation tonight, you were commenting on a number of aspects of the town engineer's report. And item number 8 was one that you discussed to some extent that you had, difficulties or problems with. But I understand that you have
No
worked this out.
difficulties, just misunderstanding.
Just misunderstanding?
Yes.
Okay, so you're all squared away with the,
We're squared away.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, anybody else before I open it to the public? All right, thank you. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to comment on this application? Anybody?
I'm Liz Piero at 35 Flowers Street. I did have more comments, and they were about the value of our own property, the way it would be affected, but it sounds like that might have been taken care of. So what I'm wondering is, whatever is said here or agreed to here, is that binding? For instance, lot number 1 being flipped, is Mr. Citino held to that because he agreed to do it at this meeting?
Yeah, if we make it part of the condition, stipulation of the subdivision approval, it's binding.
Okay. And the idea that it is beyond repair, in whose estimation is that? Is that just Mr. Citino's, or is it, do we know that?
No, I don't think the town has done an independent analysis. I mean, and frankly, if the house had been built in 2014, he could tear it down if he wanted to.
Because it doesn't have historic designation.
Yeah, I mean, and it has no, it's not on any historic register, and even if it were,
Yeah.
Essentially all that would get you is potentially, if the town had the ordinance, an extra 90 days before you could demolish it so that people could look at it and figure out if they wanted to take it away and put it somewhere else.
Yeah. So the house, the lot being flipped, I think Mr. Citino said something about it being not 5 but 10 feet from, is that from my property line, is that right? I don't have a drawing, I didn't get a copy of it.
Which one is yours, 31?
35 Flower.
Yeah, it would be at least 10, because that's the
10
minimum
from the
side yard
property.
requirement there.
Okay. I think that's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public with any comments or questions on the application? If not, do you have any additional?
She had her hand up.
Oh, come on up then.
I'll be really quick at comments.
Sure.
My name is Diva DeBella. I live at 192 Wilkett Hill Road. My yard would be where the parking spaces were. I do appreciate the flip, and I mean that in, a little bit of a selfish, but not too selfish way. And as far as like the 4 and 6 parking spaces, not that what I have to say by any means, whatever. I would rather have 6 spaces there than 2 or 3 other cars parked in front of my property, having somebody trip and fall, if there's parties going on and stuff like that. It is a lot of parking for one area, but I appreciate not having traffic in front of my house that's not mine and not having headlights in my window. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else in the public that wants to comment on this application? Going once? All right, if not, Mr. Citino, do you have any final comments?
So on the northern lot.
Come on up, please.
Just for clarification. On the northern lot that I'm going to flip, I have a total of 75 feet, and the side yard requirements, I believe, are 5 with an aggregate of 15. So I have to fit the parking on the opposite side. I'd like to keep 10. I need to defer to the surveyor to make sure I can fit the parking on the opposite side, because when we pull in, they need to be able to turn around, and I don't want cars backing out to Wilkett Hill Road. One of the challenges, another challenge that we're presented with when we take away that 15 feet is called line of sight. So when you're backing out of you were to back out of that driveway, you're really not going to see who's coming from the north all that well. So I want to be able to pull out head first, and then they'll have the line of sight to see who's coming from the northern side. The southern side, there's plenty of line of sight. Northern sight, it's there, but I have to make sure I can turn the car around. It may go down to 5 feet. If it does, I have no problem stipulating that we're going to give you shrubbery along your side. I will not put up a fence. You have a fence there now, and you can let that stay. I'll put shrubs right up against it. So I have no problem stipulating to that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Mr. Citino. Who, did the town engineer, or did you recommend the new setback?
The town engineer. Because when they take away the 15
You
feet,
can't answer this question, but you don't know what they're gonna do with that setback. And when, I mean.
in terms of
Apparently they're
the,
gonna
in terms
do
of
a
the road?
straightening, But that's.
yeah, they're going to, so they're going to streamline. If you're on the
Yeah.
southern side of Wilkett Hill, they're going to
My
streamline.
question is when, and I know maybe
Oh,
ask
when?
you, maybe ask the town.
So I do, all my work is government work.
What's that?
All my work is government work. I can tell you when the government when the project is in the conceptual stage, by the time it comes to fruition, it's probably 10, 12 years down the road.
I hope sooner than
That's
that,
on average.
because I felt strongly about this, but I'm glad you agreed to the
I had no
setback
problem.
that he asked for.
Yeah, if they wanted it bad enough,
I
they
think
take
it
it
was the
eminent
right thing
domain,
to
so
do.
I'm not gonna fight it.
Because I've heard, and why I'm up in that end of town, I don't know, talking to the guy that does the guide crossing for the school there, and saying that's a terrible intersection.
Yeah,
And
it's a
he
tough
has to
one.
put up with it every day.
I know the study,
That might have been 10 years ago, but I've never forgotten it. and, how
the
he
study's
felt.
been underway for 2 years.
What's that?
Study was underway for 2 years. It was a 2-year study.
Thank you.
I'm all set. Thank you. All set?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Yep,
Can I ask another question, please?
yeah, come on up.
I only have the drawing from 2 weeks ago, and it's not flipped. So it looks like that when the lot is flipped, the house is, what's going behind the house? The parking lots are adjacent to the house?
Parking lot's on the side of the house. I don't know the backyard.
To the south of the house, down toward Knott Street.
Right, okay. So the back, behind the lots and the house are all just a grassy yard? Okay. All right, thank you.
Anything else before we close the public hearing? All right. If not, someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
All right,
Second,
all right. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, hearing's closed. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a 3-lot subdivision for 248 Knott Street with reference to 2102-22 for re-subdivision in concert with and in agreement with the memo from our town engineer dated April 7th with 18 specific bullets, as well as the email referenced today, April 19th, 2022, by our town engineer to Mr. Frank Citino.
Okay.
second.
Do you also want to have as one of the conditions that
The house
the
be-
lot one, the
Yeah.
house be to
I
the
noted
north
that,
of
but
the
didn't say it, yes.
parking?
With the understanding that the house on the northern location will be flipped with a proper driveway to be to the side of the property.
The south side of the property.
Second.
Okay, all right. Motion by Tony, second by George. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to discuss or add as a condition?
The easement that Tom's requested is, I think is covered in the items of the memo, right? So that's included.
As
We
well-
don't
as well
have
as
to
the
reference
email.
back to that, right?
Yeah, that's why I referenced the email that
Okay.
came.
Yeah, it's in here.
So as long as we cover that, I'm
Yep.
good with it, okay.
Right. All right. Anything else anybody has? If not, all in favor of the motion to approve with conditions, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm 10 years younger now. Have a good night.
Good luck. When you gonna start, when you coming in for the other part of it?
Which other, the final?
Well,
For the
yeah, you
drawings?
gotta come
He
in.
doesn't have to come here.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm all set, I believe I'm all set here, George. But then, now the architects will finalize the drawings, it'll take about a month, and then we'll submit them to Steve and Derek, and hopefully we start building in about 2 months. Thank you very much, have a good night.
Take care. All right, item 3.2, public hearing 2103-22Z. Anthony Angelillo seeking a special permit for a change of use of 512-516 Silas Dean Highway to Micropigmentation Academy for a personal service school use. And you want to come up and identify yourself by name and address?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Angelillo. I reside at 81 Pentlow Avenue, New Britain, Connecticut. I personally own and operate an establishment called Micropigmentation Academy at 350 South Street Highway in the Fobby Building. I've been there about 4 years. We work on anybody from cancer to anybody like you and I that has hair loss or issues or any kind of cosmetic issues that would need cosmetic tattoo to replicate body parts or anatomies that they have. Basically, I'm looking to move my academy to a bigger location because we've outgrown it, and that's what I'm here for today.
All right. And the location you've chosen is the one across the street that used to be the fishing stuff?
Yeah, I used to go there younger when I was there, and went there to get a boating license, all this kind of stuff, and went to patronize the place. It was a kind of a weird coming up to it and be able to purchase this place and be able to after being in it, it was kind of weird, but it fits our profile, and it will give us enough of space to do what we have to do.
Have you had a chance to look at the comments from
I sure
either
have.
Dominic Caruso or from the town engineer?
Yeah, I sure have. The comments he indicated about no greenery on the property. There is greenery on the property. It's on the new site plan. You can list there. My guy listed what was there, but there's not a whole hell of a lot of greenery on it. But I know if we were to do any kind of breaking ground on the back, it'd be virtually in no way to do this because it's wetlands, and if you break ground back there, we have to go through all kinds of stuff to get that issue squared away. He was talking about putting, if I don't have to do any kind of wetlands issues or, go through them to do anything, I have no problem doing it. We're in a, timetable here, and of course, money is an issue, and it's going to cost me quite a bit to build the interior out to specs. And of course, the front and getting things to look up to par. He did indicate about the driveway being kind of, shoddy, and I'm going to fix and repair that driveway to make it usable. In other words, front, if it needs to be ripped out, I'm going to replace it. Up to the point of being able to like resurface it and level it out and restripe it in the whole 9 yards. The front sidewalk in front of the porch in front of the building, that's all being torn out and redone because it has to be done. That's all. It's not even to the level, we have to make it handicap accessible, so all that's being torn out and redone completely. Everything indicates and doesn't seem really any issue other than the possibilities of saying I have to replace the whole driveway, and I'm going to repair it and fix it so it's usable. And as time goes on, obviously, if the driveway deteriorates further, I'm going to, fix or replace that as necessary.
You're just not gonna do crack sealing, though. You're gonna do serious stuff to it,
Oh, yeah.
where it needs to be knocked out, you knock it out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if there's like in the front, the whole front, it really has to be replaced. So I have funds, I put aside directly for that expense because I know that had to be done. When I first was looking at the property, I assessed it, I'm like, oh, that's garbage. The back can live a little bit longer, but it will buy me enough time to recoup some of my money to take that to a step further, a year or so down the road and start working on that area. But it needs to be redone, though.
You don't have any real problems with the town staff's comments about things you gotta do, such as some little more green around it and around the sides and
Well,
meet the new town, the specifications we now have in town?
Well, the greenery in the back is going to be, I don't know how they're going to make that happen. I mean, the greenery back, it's a flood zone. Nothing's going to take there. You try to plant shrubbery or trees, it's going to die because it's actually below floodplain. And all the way into the basement, for that matter, is where the floodplain is on that.
Yeah, you're actually into the floodplain with your parking lot, aren't you?
Yeah, so that's why I was
It was wet down there this morning.
Yeah, that's why I figured, basically fixing driving, restriping it, and if there's anything I could do down further to make it work to the town's satisfaction, I have no problem with that. But it's, if they want me to rip that whole driveway, that's over $100K. I won't be able to. This project won't be able to
Did
happen.
the town engineer say anything about that real low area down at the very back of the parking lot?
I mean, he's looking for, information on, flagging the wetland area and,
I meant drainage more than flagging it down in there, but.
They were indicating something about, you know,
And start planting,
I have no problem planting anything right there, you know. You know, anything that would suck up the water would help with anything, but along that, there's a neighbor,
way down there.
yeah, the building to the right of me, they purposely pitched their driveway to dump all their water onto the property. So, that would help some of the runoff if they weren't allowed to do that. But they literally, they have their median cut to let the water come off, run off all their property from that property to the right of me, all onto ours. So, which is kind of not fair to make me mediate their water, when if they stop their water, it'd be a lot less water going off of that
I
property.
think your lawyer could probably challenge an adjoining property owner, you can't do that. You can't collect and put onto your neighbor's property water.
Well, that's what's going on there. I have pictures of
Well,
it.
you can't do it.
But, you know, it's there existing.
Absolutely challenge them.
Yeah, it's existing there that they've been doing it, so, and I've been there countless days watching what goes on,
Besides the
so,
point that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Having to deal with it.
but, you know, it's something that I'm coming into now, and everything's come to my attention, so I have to figure out how to, assess and attack all these certain issues that are possibly down the road.
And are you putting green along that side of the, south side of your driveway and down to the parking lot and stuff?
You mean where there's a wall?
Yeah, I guess so, along there. Is that required, Denise, along that side?
My only issue is if I ever decide down the future to do anything in the basement, to utilize that space or, you know, something future-wise, I would need that additional space for side parking if I was to do something. You know, or if not, it's going to render it useless, and then I'll be paying taxes on something I can't utilize at all. So, I mean, that was another issue, you know, we tried to situate the parking that in the future, if I decide to do something in the basement, maybe rent it out to somebody that, you know, that could get something approved there, to a type of business that would approve there, you know, like a sweeping business that was there before that's gone, but something that would be able to utilize that space, they'll need the extra parking area there. And if I take that up and put shrubbery where it's probably going to die anyways, it's kind of defeating the purpose and then robbing of the possibility of being able to rent that space out. So that was the only issue. I know I think the front is very important. So how the front looks to the road. I'm thinking of in between the two buildings, from at the front of the building to the left of the building, and that last, where there's if you look on the print, I was thinking about kind of making it bubble out and put greenery there, like right in between the two properties. Right where they, if you guys know where that print is, I can show you, point it out. So if you look at the front of the building,
Yep.
all the way to the left side of the building, how the buildings are in between each other. So bubble that property out there a bit, and then
Drainage down that side.
there's greenery all along that side. There's no, it's two buildings next to each other, and that's the only greenery I have on the property. But I can extend it out into the driveway a bit, almost like a whole, out the width of, the length of a car, and median that out, because I'm redoing that whole front driveway, and put greenery there, which will help satisfy and make the place look more frontal appeasing to the passing traffic. And of course, you guys got to look at it out your windows.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify something here,
Sure.
please?
Yep.
So we have a memo here that says that this site is 100% impervious material, so it means that there's basically blacktop everywhere, with the exception of the one area you just mentioned. And what's being suggested is that you add some low-impact development features, and there's 4 of them that are suggested in this memo.
If I can do those without going into Wetlands Commission, I have no problem doing them.
Okay, the wetland probably is not gonna be an issue. My property's on wetland, and unless you build a structure, it's not a problem.
All right, so if they want me to do medians around the parking in the back, you talking about those little,
Well, it's hard to understand exactly where these are relative to the plan.
yeah, I know what
Because,
they're
you
just,
know, the plan is kind of small, and trying to figure out exactly what is.
what they're saying on each side of where the
It
striped
says
parking is?
add 2 end islands.
Yep.
For traffic direction purposes. Add landscape strip along the edge of the pavement where the CLMP right-of-way is. Add pervious area where the Jersey barriers are now. And the last comment, need to repave the whole lot, but you said you can't afford to repave the lot. So 3 of these items are relatively low impact, and they do increase a little bit the greenery and the way traffic flows. So I'm wondering, can you do these?
Let me take a look at those again. Do you have a copy of that, Rick?
The first 3 bullets on the top.
I'll double check those.
I agree with you, that more green needs to be added to the
They're
whole lot.
reasonable items, they're not that big.
That's what I was trying to get at, too.
And-
All right, so at the end of each island where the parking stripes are, that's not a problem. I don't have a problem doing that. Let me see here. At the end of the 10 parking stripe in the middle of the rear parking lot. Okay, and along the edge of the pavement and the CLP right-of-way. So that's all the way at the very end?
Yeah, at the farthest downhill end.
I have no problem with that, especially if it's not, if it's not, like I said, I don't have to, if it's making that look pretty and I don't have to, go through hell or high water to do it, I have no problem doing it.
No, I mean, and frankly, that was comment 3 in the town engineer's memo that I was more concerned about observing was doing that, because it's basically taking the water that's flowing down the hill and giving it something green to sit
Yeah.
into.
To permeate, I have no problem with that, I mean,
Actually help the
Okay.
drainage.
yeah, I have
Yeah,
no
that-
problem with that.
All right, so
Okay, good.
I'm glad,
Yeah, those
You're open-
aren't an issue.
yeah, you're
Okay.
open to these, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, and we understand the concept of repaving the whole lot when you've
Yeah, it's a
you're in a
big nut.
position to do that. I mean, obviously, you want to fix the part up front just
Yeah.
so that your customers don't wonder what kind of,
Yeah, and I want to make sure it's
Junkyard you run
definitely going to be
with.
completely
Yeah.
safe. I'm not going to operate a place that's going to be a hazard to anybody walking in or out of my establishment.
yeah, you won't be able to get insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really about it.
Okay. Tony?
Do you have any other concerns at the 18 bullets by the town engineer? Any other observations or comments?
All the other beginning stuff is all pretty much just on the site plan, it's just where the wording and stuff that is not an issue. I don't see anything there that, can I see it real quick?
Yeah, because we don't want to approve something and then you go in there tomorrow and you go, wait a minute, I didn't know about any of this.
Yeah, I mean, the writing is just changing on the, Oh, this? Oh,
Yeah, the first list there.
this is the one, right?
Just check, what's the date on that one?
23rd, March 23rd.
March 23rd on that one?
While you're reading that, I have another question for the chairman or for Denise. If we have a retail use, it's coming back in with another retail use. The reason why he's here today is because of the intensity of the type of use or the utilities that are being used for the first and basement lower level,
That's change of use from retail to personal services.
personal services. That's clear like that, okay.
Yeah, it has, I think it has
Did you
a
receive
slightly
this memo?
different parking requirement,
You
but it
haven't
still
received it?
complies with it.
No, it's all right, I'm supposed to.
I did see that stated, just wanted to put it on
This
there.
is the one that was most important, right here.
This is a summary. That's a summary of the 18 items, basically.
From here down, right?
Yeah, but the bullets here are the green space that we were talking about.
Yeah, and I have no problem with they're not telling me to go rip the whole
I
thing.
think Tony was saying there's others that I didn't ask you that are in this memo. That's why maybe you should look at the 18 before we approve it.
And actually, the town engineer is here now if you have any questions about those 18 items.
Derek, you can't even walk in the door without getting called.
It's called good timing.
Yeah, really. He figured he'd wait long enough that we were on
That's right.
this application.
A lot of the stuff was already dealt with, I believe, on this list. I had my guy go through this list on the, what was his name that was in your place? He got the updated site plan at the last meeting here, I actually handed it to him in front of everybody. So a lot of this stuff was actually put on that new site plan. I'm just double checking here. Give me a second here. The grading and all that stuff was done on.
I asked because if we approve this based on each one of these items, subject to the reviews of the department heads,
Yes.
you'll be
Held to him.
Subject to
I
that
wanna make
approval.
sure.
Yeah, we just don't want you to have any surprises.
it's a challenging site in itself.
Yeah.
The thing that's on this is number 9, I have an issue with. I already attempted to contact, and they said they're not signing shit in this terminology. That's the terminology I got. But the property's been used, and they use the driveway, and I have no issue with their clients using the driveway because they use it every day. So I just asked if they would like to have something in writing that the town can have, and they're like, oh, I'm not signing. So I'm like, okay, all right, no problem.
Will you be leasing the property, or are you a part owner?
Own it.
You own the whole property?
I'm buying it, yes. This whole thing is contingent on me buying it or going to somebody else. And it's, that's actually the owner's realtor back there. I'm kind of watching what's going on here.
Can you
It's
share
a
with us
long
what you think you're budgeting for the renovations, for the interior renovations? Interior?
They're somewhere in the 200K range. And that's maximum, but,
Sizable.
it is sizable. I'm expecting to be far cheaper than that, but, I have to go by, what it could be up to. So, I'm
Great.
definitely putting some serious, money into this place, and I don't want it to be an eyesore, obviously. But yeah, the number 9 would be, that I can't guarantee.
Just so I understand, number 9 is people driving on your property?
Yeah, for the next door neighbor,
So they're accessing your property without your approval?
correct. The neighbor's clients, if you look at the back of the property, and I showed the engineer, she's seen it too, right? They'll just go in our driveway side, right? And they'll pull right across and go to the yarn place and to the hair salon. And they just pull in, sometimes they even park in our spot, which I'll be putting a sign parking, so they're not gonna do that, but I don't care that they use the driveway, I really don't care, but when I went over there, last week to try, hey, just to get some, so you guys have something in case there was issues, that, that there's something in writing that's okay, they've been using it, so I don't mind, I mean, it's not like, it's really funny, because my guys come in, and they wouldn't be, they don't have to, it's just right-handed, and they come in, and most likely, they're gonna go down in the back and come back out that, so if they ever decide that they didn't want me to, or they have a problem with it, I'll just put Jersey barriers up in between the 2 property lots, and take those 5 places and put them in the back and leave the handicap to the front left, if that's the case. If I ever had to do something like that down the road, if something ever came up with it. I'm trying to think of things if they ever, if they put up a stink down the road, that I have a way to go around it, and I do, that will still be, meet the requirements of the town, especially with the handicap, So that was my only concern when I went there to try to get them, hey, because he recommended it, there might be some signs, not from the engineer did, I think. Did you get anything, was there anything in writing? I don't know, anything established, but I know it's been being used, so that would be the only issue that, other than that here, that's the only thing I really see here. That's no big deal. That flood zone thing was done. The 14, revise the label for Beaver Brook. What do they mean by that?
I wondered too.
Can't read it, it's too small, so I can't tell you what it says.
I'm just wondering, is it just talking about labeling as Beaver Brook?
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah, I have, I mean, it's.
What's that mean, Denise? I'm kind of
I
confused.
can't read exactly what it says, but it says Brook something, so it, you know, there's just some
Oh.
kind of.
Have no problem with, highlighting that.
Dot the I, cross the T.
Looks like it says Stuffing Brook or something.
Well, what's number 15? Provide a sub-distance?
Yeah, if the pins are not on the exact corners, show how far they are from the exact corners, it would be like 1.42 feet or
Oh,
something.
so my surveyor would.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
an issue.
Yeah, the engineers have to.
Yeah, no problem. And then the same thing, would that be coordinates on the 2 lot corners and 2 benchmarks on the plan? So that's all surveyor stuff. That's not a problem. Add a standard planning zoning commission, that's another just wording thing on the site plan?
It's a square that gets signed.
And that's not on there, so
Yeah.
we have no problem. That's just on there. That can either have, the surveyor will do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, no problem. And, you call before you dig, yeah, I know that. That's really about it. I can't see anything here, because they're not being, unreasonable, and like I said, I want to make the place, appeasing to anybody going by it. We have a very high standard. I mean, I went through a rigorous process of getting, copy protecting my name and Academy. It's something that's been built for a long time, and we're world recognized, and I have people fly around me with cancer from having me work on them. It's just from around the world, from the work that I do, scar camouflaging and all that. So I feel I'm definitely a benefit to the community and make that place look a lot better. It's been an eyesore. So, I mean, that's pretty much about it.
We're asking you to come up with a quality site and operation, that's all. We know you will.
Oh, yeah. We've been operating there for about 4 years, so.
Very good. All right, it is a public hearing, so give you a chance to rest, and might be a brief rest. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to comment on this application? Anybody in the public? Well, your brief rest is over. All right, nobody in the public? Did you have any other comments you wanted to make? Anybody else have questions?
No.
Yeah, I think just before we close the hearing, just to kind of close the loop on number 9 regarding the documentation. I mean, you talk about it in the sense of your neighbor to the north driving through your property. I guess, the biggest risk, you talk about blocking it off for them. The biggest risk would be that if you have to block it off, does your circulation work properly too?
My sideway would be, I have two-way traffic coming down the right side. That's why I don't put no parking on the right side of the building. There'd be enough for two-way traffic, if I had to.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether that comment related to in the front as well as down.
It was only in the front, because.
Yeah, please.
If you look out the back window of this building and you look in the road, what happens is the traffic is going, north, and people readily pull into my driveway first to go to the buildings that are joining, because it's just convenient. Instead of going past those buildings, taking a right and then coming in. So it just flows easier for all those clients that come in there to utilize my driveway to park in those two nest businesses next to me.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the only point I was trying to make is that if your neighbor says, screw that, and puts a Jersey barrier on his property, your people will have to back out.
No, my people would just go right down the back.
Okay.
And I would just end up parking the one handicap in front and then not utilizing the front. If they did that, I'd turn it all green.
Okay.
I have no issue.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
that there was no mystery there.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't foresee a problem. I mean, they've been using it. It's not like I'm gonna, put up a stink. I think it would be more or less if I did something, put something up there as opposed to them. I highly doubt they would want to do that because it would affect their business.
Yeah, I mean, and if it's been going on for a long time,
Yeah, and I have
you
no
probably
intentions
have
of doing
legal
it.
rights.
Why
already.
ruffle the feathers? I'm all set,
Okay.
With reference to the two memos, we already talked about the engineer's memo, the town planner for Dominic. Of all the notes that he has on here, the only one you were challenged by is need to repave the whole lot. That was a suggestion, I think, on his.
Yeah.
You won't be doing that.
That's the only thing. I won't be able to repave the whole lot, but I'm definitely going to make sure that lot is safe and up to standards because, again, I don't want to have any kind of problems with anybody getting injured or anything.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Last call, anybody in the public on this application? All right. If not, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Make the motion to close the hearing?
Second.
All right. Motion by Tony, second by Paul. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. Someone want to make a motion on the application?
I'll make a motion that we approve application 210322Z. Anthony Angelillo seeking a special permit for change of use of 512 to 516 Celestine. With the following understanding and conditions that the memo dated March 23, 2022 from the town engineer, that the 18 items will apply with the exception of item number 9, which doesn't need to be applied to this approval. And in addition to that, I would also like to point out the memo that was generated by, I guess, the assistant planner, or, yeah, I think it was the planning department. The 3 conditions specifically that were discussed earlier, that's to add 2 islands for traffic direction purposes, add a landscape strip along the edge of the pavement on the CLNP, and add pervious area where the Jersey barriers are growing.
Second.
All right. Does
I hope
anybody?
that's clear enough. There's a lot of
Yeah.
items here.
Yeah. No, we get it. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I'm a little confused by the motion, because my understanding was the concern of the applicant in terms of the town planner, or the town engineer's memorandum of March 23rd, that his main consideration related to items 1 and 3, which deals with the potential for having to repave the whole lot, and not number 9, which is providing documentation of the access agreement. My understanding is that the resolution as proposed basically deletes item number 9 and incorporates 1 and 3 in their entirety. This isn't really town engineer's
I think
memorandum.
items 1 and 3 are general statements about increasing some of the pervious areas. The specific things that were suggested are the 3 bullets in the memo that the town planner put down. So what I'm suggesting is that in order to be a little bit more specific of what we are asking him to do relative to the generalities of 1 and 3, it comes down to the 3 bullets on the memo by the planning department. Denise,
Yeah.
do I have that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and item 3 in the engineering, suggestion for the landscape strip along the eastern end is, essentially identical to number 2
Yeah, right.
in the town
Exactly.
planner's memo.
Exactly, yeah. Is there a second on the motion?
Yeah, there is a second. So, if I may interrupt, So essentially, what I'm getting is, or understanding that the motion does incorporate numbers 1 and 3 of the town engineer's report to the extent that it's reasonable or feasible. And that the town, essentially that the town engineer and the applicant will work to provide, the applicable details of what that really means on his eventual site plan.
Right, and I think to kind of amplify on that, we've identified the first 3 items in Dominic's memo as the specific items that we believe are the appropriate ways to address 1 and 3.
Right.
Those are the
Reasonable.
bulletin, the last 4 bullets on the town planners.
Everything except need to repave the whole lot,
Right.
which we understand is,
Right. So
Not-
basically deleting the need to repave the whole lot, but incorporating, reasonable applications of all the other bullets on that memo as well as the town engineer's memo.
yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Anybody else have questions, concerns? All right. If not, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Now, up to the second item, 3.2, public hearing 2104-22Z, Hartford Brewing Company, Inc., seeking a special permit in accordance with Section 52, F2, and 9 for a change of use to a brewpub with outside dining at 245 Main Street.
Hi.
Applicant is here.
Yep, my name's Micah Kerr. I live at 553 Maple Street here in Weathersfield, and I'm the owner of Boondoggle Beers, which is the DBA for Hartford Brewing Company LLC. I think that might have been a typo in the agenda, but it is accurate in the applications. First things first is I was here before you on November 3rd, at which, well, virtually on Zoom, and at the time the commission opted to approve my application. That was my second appearance for that application, and that was a unanimous approval of this project with 14 comments at the time. And I am back here today not to apply anew. I am here, and I'm going to try to use the more appropriate terminology, but I'm here to address some of those items on the 14. The town staff, specifically, I think Derek, the town engineer, and Bonnie, the interim planner, interim town manager, specifically had some concerns around the handicap parking and the location of it, which we did discuss in the meeting on November 3rd. And the primary reason we're back here is because some of the terminologies used in those comments led, I think it was specifically comment 1, allowed for the no approval to go forward unless all aspects were supported by specifically Bonnie and Derek. So that was item 1 on, I believe I responded to some of this, and that was on Denise sent that out. So you'll see, you should have it in front of you, just for clarification. So we took the comments from this commission, went back to the drawing board with them, and believe we resolved pretty much everything that was at the time unresolved. There was some additional, like some questions regarding specifically why is there no gate drawn on the patio area, and it was, we didn't draw it, so whoops. So you'll see now the patio area has a gate drawn, and there's a little bit more of a detail in terms of how that looks with the permeable pavers that was recommended by town engineering. So all the wastewater stays on property as was previously planned, it's a bit more detailed. Some of the fundamental changes that have happened, and I'm going to go through them one by one, and it's on my phone, so pardon me for looking at my phone, but this is the best way for me to do it, are that the patio detail was the first thing I mentioned. We made those changes. Number 2 was at the rear of the building, there was a stairwell that protrudes from the west of the building out of the basement, and we put that in there so that the wait staff would be able to easily access the patio. Oh, and I'm sorry, the primary thing was of the 14 is that the patio, when I initially drew it, I was trying to lease land from the town, and in that meeting, it was determined that the board would rather that we did not go forward with that and just stick with my property line. So that was the fundamental change of the patio. So we drew that as the commission asked for it. And when we did that, we had to draw the exit so that it would gain access to that patio area. So you'll see on the west, you'll see a little set of stairs that comes out, and you can turn to the left to head to the front patio or go to the parking area. So that was not as detailed, and so it's something that you should take note of, because that is one change from the November 3rd meeting. Another is...
So wait a minute, access from the basement is coming out back?
There's multiple points of access. This is a new point of access that isn't required for safety, but it's something that, in order to make it a more functional building,
Yeah.
right. So that will be coming out of the kitchen effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's on, you can even see the details inside the kitchen for that section. And it comes out, there's at level with the basement, and then I think it's 3 steps up to the level of the parking. So on each direction and nowhere forward.
Is there handicapped access to the basement?
So there is, it's not, I guess I would say it's not formally proposed in the sense. We will be having a lift in the basement for me primarily to remove heavy items out of the basement area. As with brewing, we often deal with wet grain. When grain gets wet, we put it in a barrel, and then obviously it's just not several hundred pounds, right? So in order to make it, OSHA friendly, the plan for the garage, and it's on one of the drawings there, just shows a table lift, so in order to lift folks up and down from that.
So you only have employees in that basement, right?
Yeah, it's only staff only, correct, yes.
And you don't plan to have handicapped employees there ever?
Not in the basement, no. It's an industrial space that's very dangerous. You need to be able to avoid contact with caustic materials such as acid. It's not exactly a situation where you want somebody who is specifically mobility impaired. And I think that's probably, I would say, fairly standard. I have plans to have folks that work for me that have disabilities, but not, you can't brew beer in a wheelchair, unfortunately. It's not something you can do. I'm certain there's probably a way to devise it, but it's not, it's outside of that kind of, construction. So, in fact, most of the positions when they're advertised require a considerable minimal lifting capability. And because we're often carrying heavy kegs, bags of grain, which weigh, usually 55 pounds, unless they're European, in which case they weigh a little less, because just the way we do it. But and so from that regard, there is a limit to the accessibility that we can do in the basement for our staff.
Okay.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean on the ground level. So behind the bar is accessible, and the floor area is accessible, and the patio will be accessible.
How?
How?
Up the front steps?
Yeah, no, we covered this the last time, so there's no changes to
But I
that.
wasn't here last time.
Well, none of us were here last time. We were at home.
November you're talking.
November 3rd, yeah.
When?
Yeah, you voted, but it's okay. I'll tell you, there's a wheelchair lift. So in the front, you see, I don't know what page it's on.
I thought you had something out front even way back, but.
No, there's a so I'm redoing the front entry, so it includes a wheelchair lift. because this is kind of a fundamental aspect of my, the way I look at the business is, people in wheelchairs should be able to come in the front door like you and I. And I have a personal thing there. It's due to my mother having been in a wheelchair for many years. I don't want to have a ramp going up and into the back door. And every proposal you folks have received in the last 25 years, and I've read through all of them, involved a ramp up the back door, and this is something I'm unwilling to do, and therefore I'm willing to take on the additional expense of rebuilding the front entry, and it'll cost a good amount, but it's the right thing to do.
And that's why the handicap spaces you're adding up front are
Yes.
close to that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's the intent of the ADA, which you have to sometimes
Sure.
put in front of reading it for interpretation. The intent of the ADA is to create equality amongst all of us. And especially at a time when so many young people have been going off to war in Afghanistan, Iraq, for so many decades now. It's sort of like a flashback to when the ADA came about and with the Vietnam vets and such. So I think it's kind of important that we give folks the ability to be human and walk in the front door and feel welcome and encouraged instead of having to go in a back door. So that's just me. And luckily, the law, I think, supports my request. So that's kind of where that's going. Is that a good answer, George, or?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
acceptable? Yep.
You're going to talk about the new parking now out front and stuff like that?
Well, I wanted to go through the changes from the approved, because this isn't a new, so partially why this came in the way it did, and to describe, I don't know if folks know, but there's been a lot of turnover within staff. In fact, when I had to reapply, the consultant had me reapply as a brand-new application, when in fact, I'm not doing a brand-new application. Denise, I don't know what the term you used was, but it's a modification of the approval of November 3rd. And because when I applied last time, I came for a site plan approval as part of a change of use. And so it's been 6 months, I've been trying to file those plans and I've been unable to file them. Well, at this point, since it's been so long, I have added a few other things to the site plan. And so it's an updated site plan to go with a modification of the prior approval. And I can always file an updated site plan, and that's, I guess, why the people I paid told me to do it. My staff, my engineer, and my architect. So we're filing it, so, yes.
So you're going to discuss changes you made to the previous proposal?
The previous approval, yes.
Previous approval.
Yep, because it's a
These
modification.
changes were considered by the planning department to be substantial, is that why you're here? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
Any modification to a special permit requires another special permit approval.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to go through the same process that you did when you got it in the first place
Right.
to modify a special permit.
Yeah.
And the special permit has an associated site plan that he can change as well.
So procedurally, there was the original approval. He can keep working subject to any of the stipulations that are in there, but if there's a change
That's right.
or an addition,
Yeah.
then you come back. Got it.
Yeah. So there's changes, and some of those changes, the changes were really based on, and I mean, Derek, I guess, is as good as a person to speak to this as anybody, as the location of the handicap parking is our primary point of concern, I think would be a safe statement, unless he has others. And there are, I guess, as the developer, I don't think that's an appropriate term for me, but as the developer, I am, I guess I have to have my own hills to die on, and the location of handicap parking is one of them, because, like I said, my mother was in a wheelchair, and I will not allow my handicap parking to go in the back. I wouldn't let her go up a ramp in the back of my building. I don't think that's right. So for me, that was something I wasn't willing to negotiate on, but conveniently, when it was approved back on November 3rd, item, I think it was 13, identified the drawing that I included here, which is the 3 spaces on Main Street being repainted as 2 handicap spaces, and then the cross-hatched area for the wheelchair landing pad, I guess, the wheelchair landing area.
Well, you're not doing more spaces on Main Street.
And
Just
absolutely
changing
not,
some
no.
Generalized parking to handicap parking.
Just repainting those 3 spaces as 2 handicap spaces, yes, sir.
No complaints by anybody on this?
By whom?
Citizens?
I-
Staff? I don't
You
know.
tell me.
Anybody?
Derek has,
Well,
The-
why don't we let him finish his presentation?
I mean, I'm open to this because honestly, I'm not certain why I'm back here, to some degree. It's a little disheartening. I mean, I think I've had some conversations with you. I mean, Mr. Chairperson, you came to that one meeting to rehash with the town manager and such. I met with a guy named Peter Gillespie who doesn't work for the town anymore, and I took his recommendations. I met with a town manager who doesn't work for the town anymore, and I took his recommendations. And now I have an interim town manager who was given complete control over my approval, and I had never met her before in my life, and yet once I got approval from you guys, the wording of the approval allowed her to stop me cold. This has cost me, well, it's irrelevant, but this has been, it's been unfortunate. So I'm trying to be like magnanimous. Let's go for it, you know, and because that's really what I want. Like, I live here in town. I've been walking by that building for 12 years. I want to reactivate it exactly the way the town says they want to reactivate it. This town paid for a economic development study in the historic part of town, and it covered 3 buildings during that process. This building was one of the 3 buildings. I read that report. I hope y'all read that report. That report very clearly says that the ground floor should be some form of food service place, talking food halls, things like that, restaurant. So Brewpub is a form of restaurant. And the upstairs should be performance space. This is precisely my plan. I've been very open as I'm trying to give the town exactly what the study said was the right thing for the building, and I'm spending my own personal money to do so. I've already spent money on the building, so I hope I show to the folks around here that I'm serious about it, and I want to create something that I think the public wants. And I think the prior approval by the zoning board is some indication that I think the town supports the application. It was just that the wording and the detail allowed for some folks to really kind of hold up the process, and I think we're back here to clarify those details, hence the clarification of the site plan and the tweaks that I've done. And I'm hoping that that gets us to the next step, so.
As the chairman has referenced, Micah, could you go through your, I think it's a March 29th memo that you wrote us, and I think the modifications would include the narrative you gave about, and correct me if I'm wrong, the small batch craft beer, the new garage, the garage itself.
You're talking the project
pavers,
description?
The pavers. Tell us specifically in a short overview on what is your specific modifications based on what we had in our virtual.
Yeah, that's what I was going through
Good.
specifically.
Yeah, and I was trying to allow you to get back to doing
Okay,
that.
I'm at your mercy, so
Let's
I'm
go-
just trying to, you know.
Let's go back to that memo.
Yep. Well, the specific changes, and that's really all I'm going through here, is so, just a quick recap, patio detail. All right, so I guess maybe while we're on patio detail, are there any questions about how the patio detail on the site plan has been updated or changed? Because I added gates as recommended, I added a visual, I mean, I don't think we had shown a bike rack previously. I had indicated where it was, but now it's on there. You know, really kind of minimal changes in those regards, but it is the primary change is one of the commissioners was concerned that based on the total square footage of land involved in the patio, that the occupancy number would be very large. Now, the recommendation at the time was to move it to be just on the property lines, and we've done so, and so therefore I believe I've satisfied all of those concerns. Like I said, number 2 was the kitchen exit at the rear, And we had a variance that said that it was okay with the setback, but just before the meeting last time, and again, part of the issue with that is, Mr. Gillespie was involved in that, and so I don't factually know how that ended, so we just made sure that we're proposing, this is what we want to do, we want to build these stairs. I don't know if that variance covers these stairs. We've never gotten a determination on that, but just the same, the stairs are drawn exactly as we intend to build them, and so I want, they're there and they're worthy of discussion. The garage is on there. I drew the garage on this time because it's been, like I said, 6 months. The purpose of a site plan is to show everything you intend to do within the next 5 years. I have no intent of building a garage right now, but it was previously approved as a variance and is deeded, and therefore I am able to build a garage on that footprint. It's just showing it now on the plan, okay? Part of the reason that we're doing that is also because it affects the shape and nature of the parking area. If you recall in the past when we just had to put a surface parking area, which I never liked that because I was always intending to do the garage. The purpose of the garage is to create a place where I can keep anything that makes noise or smells out of the view. I'm aware at the exposure of this property, and I've endeavored to reach out to the neighbors, and I don't want to disturb folks. And so using that space will allow me to have, as an example, the spent grain, which I had previously mentioned, I can store it there. I otherwise intend to store it in the basement, that is noted. But I don't need a dumpster sitting out in a parking lot that gets picked up at 6 a.m. and disturbs people. I don't want that. I was told that that was an issue in the neighborhood because of the other dumpster in the area, and I don't want to be that guy. In fact, it just makes it easier to have me handle it through my own actions of driving things where I need to go. As it is, my business involves delivery, and therefore we're constantly moving our product. And so why wouldn't I be able to load the spent grain into a vehicle for the farmer, which is, Hayes Farm. So our spent grain will go to the piggies. They said that they'd love to have the free spent grain because most farms use that. And I can take the garbage off to the landfill. It doesn't, to me, it's much better than disturbing neighbors. I'm not in that business. So that's the purpose of the garage, and it's like I said, it's also deeded. The handicap parking plan, which was approved implicitly, it was written and discussed in the November 3rd meeting. However, in closed session on that meeting is when questions came up, and a 2-year, a 2-year grace period was granted as an item on the list of 14, and the way that was written is it required the engineer's approval, and the engineer was unwilling to approve that plan at the time because the town manager and the engineer didn't want to lose 3 spaces that are currently public spaces on Main Street. And I proposed it here because we need an implicit approval of that handicap plan, and that was a sticking point, because as I said, I need the handicap parking in front of the building for the reasons I mentioned prior. Hours is one other minor change. When we were here last time, some folks were concerned about the hours. So I think we adjusted the outside hours down by like an hour or so, especially on weeknights. I had no problem with that. We've absolutely changed that. The only change now is since that meeting, it has come to my attention that the chef partner that I intend to work with has some plans to do brunch, as there's a big old church across the way, and breakfast possibly, but we don't know. It's just we want the ability to serve breakfast or brunch. So that would mean instead of opening at 11, we would be able to open as early as 6, but we're flexible. It's just that, importantly, the ability to serve breakfast should be there. And as of right now, you can't get breakfast or lunch from anywhere on Monday down there. So it'd be nice to be able to offer some of that up, because it always frustrates me. That was ours. The other, I did write this, and I'm so sorry I didn't share. I'm also a big soccer nut, and all the European soccer is on at like 6 in the morning, certain times a year. And so we intend to have our patrons be able to come and show up, because when you watch soccer, if you know, it's important to have people to commiserate with, because it's almost always heartbreaking. It's just the nature of the game. And so we all watch soccer games together now. It's just, it would be here instead of at the Half Door in West Hartford, or Vaughn's, or Second Bridge Brewing in Manchester. So those are the changes. Those are truly the changes that I'm asking for. I'm really not asking for a lot of changes, but the key thing is really the handicap. And what we're looking for is on the whole section north of Church Street, along Main Street, there aren't handicap spaces on the public parking. And you have quite a few, or several at least, heading south. And we're just looking for basically the same handicap parking setup that's in front of Lucky Lou's right now. Right off their sidewalk, the town put handicap with a hash mark landing area that lines up with their sidewalk, exactly for the same reason I want, so folks can go right up. I think there they don't have a ramp, but they can go in the patio, and it's at least, has that equality value. For us, they'll be able to come inside or go on the patio, and so that's hopefully, an advantage. And it also makes our town more handicap accessible, which I think is something we should strive for, because it currently lacks handicap parking there. So those are my 5 changes. I'm happy to go over other things, and I know I can present if you need to see things in larger up there. We do have it on a laptop, so I'm open to that. But those are the only actual changes to the proposal.
Could, Denise, could you just summarize, at least for me, the salient changes here that we need to consider? It sounds to me like what is critical here is the parking in the front and the addition of a garage, which eliminates 3 spaces in the back. Right, those are the 2 main issues that the town is really addressing, right? And eliminating the spaces in the back and adding the garage would require cars to back out, right? Which would be difficult and dangerous. So that's a concern you had with that arrangement in the back. And the handicapped in the front, what was the concern with what he's proposing in that? Could you clarify?
I mean, I think Derek is here really to.
Maybe Derek,
clarify the issue.
you could address the front there for us?
It has to do with, constructing new parking versus restriping existing parking.
Yeah, I agree with the issue.
The plans are right there if you want to zoom in on anything, if there's any questions too, which maybe we should put up there if it helps. There's the whole deck is there, all the plans.
Hello, everyone. Derek Greger, Town Engineer. Let me say I'm not here tonight to advocate against this application. I don't really have any issue with the proposal from an engineering perspective. The issue has always been, as was mentioned, there was some discrepancy between our impression of what the last approval included regarding handicap parking and what the applicant felt was approved. We've had many meetings with him since that was approved and had this conversation many times. I've spoken with the town manager. As you all know, we have a lot of parking issues down in that area of Main Street. So with regard to parking, I believe you all have my memo that is very consistent with the memo I issued last fall as well. I have concerns in general about parking because we are getting a lot of phone calls with a lot of complaints, and they're not going to be issues that are easily rectified. So when approving this, I made points that, yes, there is maybe approvals for parking quite a distance from this location, and if there's options to have additional parking provided in closer proximity to help offset the added traffic volume that's going to be coming in, it would be beneficial to the town. Specifically for handicap parking spaces, we feel like, given the fact that we have such limited parking to begin with, the request has been to add, at a minimum, add 2 handicap parking spaces to the south end of the existing spaces that are there, which would require a building 2.
Just to, so I'm clear, you would have to actually change this front there, right? You're adding 2 additional ones, not just restriping. That's what you're suggesting, right?
That's what town staff's position has been. Being that this requires, 47 spaces, and now we're getting 3. Didn't seem it was unreasonable to build 2 handicap parking spaces that would put the handicap parking in closer proximity to the main entrance, as it's stated by the applicant, is an interest of his. And also not affect, at least not take away any existing standard parking spaces that we have. So,
And if I remember also, there was a discussion, some work was gonna be done there anyway, so that this could have been incorporated into that future work, right?
Well-
That's why we had the 2-year timeframe.
If I may, that's what Mr. Gillespie had shared, and we found out subsequently that wasn't accurate. So, is that fair, Derek?
yeah, I would say to clarify, I don't know what was presented at the time, but the work we're asking to be done would have no adverse impact on anything we plan to do. We don't have plans at this time to do anything in that area, but certainly whatever work, we're asking to be done, whether it was a number of angled parking spaces in front or just at least some handicap parking, would not affect any of our projects.
Okay.
Okay.
You might want to stay close.
Oh, just related to that, there is some information that's not being shared, and this is something that's important to me. While we had one of these meetings, I indicated that from my understanding of how trees work, if you dig up that ground and you build those 3 parking spaces as recommended by the engineer, you're now putting that beech tree there at grave risk. The town subsequently contacted the tree warden, who indicated that, yes, they would cut the tree down. Now,
They had to cut the tree down?
They would have to. They would have to.
I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth because I didn't have the conversation.
Yeah, the tree's not
Is
going.
that what he said?
I wasn't, I did not,
That's a
I was
professional
told that it
tree
would lead to the trees being removed, that the tree warden, so
Yeah, let me clarify. Staff met with the tree warden out there to look at the trees in question. His comment was, given their condition, his opinion was he'd like to take them down. He's not planning to do that unless there was some need, whether it be a town project or a project like this. Based on what we showed him, we were proposing a couple of spaces. His comment was, it may have a negative impact, it may not. He would make a decision during construction, but either way, if he felt the tree needed to come down, he has no problem taking it down, because it's not a tree those trees are not something he's looking to save necessarily, given their condition.
Is it?
Right. I can only repeat what I've heard. I don't know the specifics on that, but certainly the contention that, we're taking away trees that should be kept based at least on the professional's opinion is not the
Could
case.
you put spaces around the corner on Church Street?
Sure, you could.
Just beyond the crosswalk there?
Pardon me, George, but not handicap spaces, though.
No,
You could- Yeah.
no.
Just make, I offered that at
Just
one
as long as
point.
you get
I
more
noticed.
spaces in the area there at the corner.
Yeah, these parking spaces have taken a lot of staff time and meetings and correspondence over to handicap parking spaces at a minimum. I mean, even that, I think, is very reasonable from the town, given the approval with 3 parking spaces out of 47 on site.
Yeah, so the survivability of the trees to me was, again, one of those things I refused to take part in, just like I refused to have a handicap ramp in the back. I live here, I walk here, I know people. While we're there, I see people taking photos of those trees in wedding dresses. I see people out there with their kids, and this happened literally this last Friday, taking photos of that beech tree. And I will have no part of cutting down a 100-plus-year-old tree in a historic district, especially in a town designated as a tree city. So, so this is why we're here. I mean, right here, you can tell this is I mean, we've had this conversation ad nauseum. I think we can't wait to be over with it, and frankly, I will, no, I can't even say it, but I'll buy everyone a beer.
What do you
This
want
building
us-
matters to
What do you
people.
want us to do then?
I want you to let me paint the stripes. This building has a capacity of 800 people.
Hold it.
Yeah.
You're saying take away the public spaces.
Well, the handicapped people are the public, George. People in wheelchairs are the public. I'm not taking anything away from the public. All right. And that's something that, I've had to answer to that in private, so I apologize. That's a loaded issue, so my apologies. In the emails, that's come up. The town manager had some issues saying that it was taking away from the public, and I made it very clear that, and again, I take this personally, so I apologize.
What they're getting at is there are less spaces in the area.
One
And you're
less
not
space.
providing a lot of them now.
I'm providing 48 spaces. My building requires 47. The handicap would be an additional 2. Those aren't even mine, those are public. So I am technically removing one town space, one public town space. Now the question is where do these town spaces come from? And I'm going to propose this to everyone, and this may become a public comment at some point. When this building was built 100 years ago this year, the lot was also subdivided. It's all on your records. It's in the file. It was created as a 1/4 acre lot 100 years ago. It was built and approved by this town to operate as an assembly use building. An assembly use building in 1922, with the floor layout that they had a capacity of 400 people on the second floor, 400 people on the ground floor, and I'm just going to call it 0 in the basement, although it had a capacity in the basement as well. This is a building that had a capacity of 800 people, and yet, where was their parking? Well, at the time it was allocated. But when the town staff decided to look at my project, they're making me treat it as though it's a brand new building. I'm not building that building. I'm not the first assembly use happening in there. I'm taking a building the town wants to reactivate. I'm taking a building that was a gathering point for a century in this town as a Masonic temple and as a dance school. And I'm trying to reopen it is all I'm trying to do. I'm lowering the capacity from 800 down to 200 or so. I mean, it's to me a little bit absurd that I'm having to argue about one space whenever the spaces that were once allocated to this building were vacated from me, and now I have to prove that within a 1/4 acre I can provide enough spaces for this building. If the town's stance is to do this, the town should have bulldozed it, okay? Because you can't create parking for this building under any use. At the lowest ratio on a per square footage basis, on a use basis, there's no way to ever provide enough parking for this property. And yet I did something that's never happened before in town. I got Heart Seed to provide me their back private spaces as public spaces. And the town is asking me to build new spaces, which is something it's never happened in the 375-year history of this town. So as a resident, as a taxpayer, as some guy trying to open a building that's been vacant for 25 years, which was listed as the most in need in town, I'm kind of beside myself. I'm going to be honest. I am befuddled by the inability of the town to follow through with what it's already adopted. It adopted the economic development plan, which very clearly has parking recommendations in it as well that it never chose to handle. I got another comment about Church Street. Folks keep talking about how it's a dangerous street to use to back into, and that we have parking problems all over Main Street on these side streets. When I received that notification in an email, I went out with my tape measure, and I measured the streets. I measured Center, Garden, Church. Center Street, 27 feet. Garden Street, 33 feet. Church Street, 37 feet, okay? Further, the state of Connecticut calls it a arterial collector road. That's the same classification as State Highway Route 3, also otherwise known as Maple Street. That's where I live. And so therefore, this street is wider, it's designed with a wider roadbed. This is designed to have parking on either side of the street, plus 2 lanes of traffic. It will not be clogged by anything that I do. It already, in fact, it has been recommended by past studies that they add parking on Church Street. I'm not even asking for parking on Church Street. If you read my parking plan, which is about 4 pages worth of information, I'm not only subsidizing my staff parking for buses and bicycles, I am also using that small parking area because I can fit more staff there than the public can fit there, and it's considerably safer to have it be staff that leave once per day rather than keep coming and going. And then, additionally, staff can block each other in and be like, hey, I gotta go, Bob, let's go. You know, it provides more parking for less. Any additional staff parking I need is guaranteed as per our prior approval and the notes that you require to be at the Heartseed property. I have signs saying no parking beyond this point. I've already set up the website and everything just like the Charles did. I'm telling no one to park on Church Street. That is Village Pizza parking. They own that. They've been using it for 15 years. I'm not going to try to tell their staff to find new parking spaces. I frankly don't care. But what I do want is I want my 800 occupancy back. I won't get it. All right? But the reality is this building used to have parking for 800. So where is it? You know, like, I don't know. I'm befuddled, I'll just say.
The three parking spaces that you're suggesting in front of the garage, those are for employees only?
Everything there's employee only. Also, as a garage, they can park inside the garage. So, and they can also, if you look, there's room.
Employees only there, right?
Only, employees only, it's on the plan as well. And not only the 3 cars that are drawn, you can very easily see I can fit one next to that, and I can fit 2 more behind it, and I don't interfere with the sidewalk at all by doing so. So I can fit 9 cars in there. Because staff, again, park and stay. They'll also be leaving in the evening at a time when I was able to hang out in the middle of the street, no problem, and measure the street with my tape measure and have no risk of getting hit. If you've ever been down to the Village, you know by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, there's nobody down in that area. The activity where the town has been really struggling is south of Church Street. We've had a lot of activity down there, and south of Church Street's always been narrower. It's always had a harder issue with parking. North of Church Street is the reason why the economic development study was commissioned by the town. They were trying to reactivate Comstock and Fair. They were trying to reactivate the Belden House, and they were trying to reactivate the Masonic Temple. And so I'm proposing just exactly what the town asked me to do.
So, is there a way to summarize the question? I mean, I think I get it. Is this boiling down to
One space.
removal of one, or removing one space that's available today, net? Is that?
That, in my opinion, yes, but I would suspect Derek might have a different opinion. You would say
Is it 1
3.
or 2?
Is that correct?
That's what I'm trying to understand,
Yeah.
1 or 2?
I'm sorry. We should just stand here.
Yeah, well, the discussion we've had numerous times is, it's taken 3 spaces, the middle of the 3 would be striped as crosshatch so that you can't park in. The other 2 would be handicap parking. As Mr. Kerr says, it's available to the public that are handicapped. The contention staff has had is, those are 3 standard parking spaces available to anyone, and now you're taking 2 of them and making them specific for handicap, and 1 of them is eliminated. So the applicant looks at it like, well, you can still park in the handicap, so those aren't really eliminated, so it's 1. We're saying 3. I mean, with all the improvements that are going to be done as part of this project, interior, exterior, site improvements, the fact that we had this conversation over and over about 2 parking spaces in a hatch area being constructed is frankly ridiculous. It's spent so much of our time and town taxpayer money to have this discussion about building from here to there 2 parking spaces.
It's about the tree.
Well, we've told you already, that's not your tree, and that has already been determined by the tree warden.
All of our trees.
I was going to get to the tree.
It's all of our trees.
So if you're concerned about the tree, we can move the parking, because there's other parking spots you can put this handicap. You could put it on Church Street, It'd be just about as close as where you're proposing
We could
it.
give up the 3 spaces.
Or you could,
but
or you could do it, or we could do different angle.
Or you can let him finish. That would be nice.
Let him go through the whole thing on the parking first, that's where I'm confused.
So with regard to the tree, he's brought this up, that's a non-issue. If he's concerned about it, I'm happy to work with him and his engineer to come up with a location for the 2 handicap spaces somewhere else along his frontage. He has plenty of frontage to build some parking, so, you know, that, my only contention, and it's been consistent with all staff, is we should not be giving up standard parking spaces for an applicant to meet his requirements at the very, very minimum requirements that he should be providing. So we don't feel it's unreasonable. And like I said, it doesn't have to be an extension of the existing parking spaces south. I mean, we can do it anywhere along the frontage. Like I said, there's room for about 16 parking spaces along that area. So we could find room for 2 with a hatched area if we need to in between.
Where would be the most logical next place to put 2 spaces? Would it be on Church? What do you think?
Well, we want to keep it towards the front of the building because that's where the access will be. Yeah, I don't remember specifically on the plan where the trees are, so maybe we could find a better area for them. Maybe we could change the angle of them so it doesn't cut in as far. We could look at doing some parallel spaces to accommodate it, so there are options.
Well, it's gonna be next, so the alternative spaces wherever, would they be the head ends or diagonals, or would they be parallel parked to the curbs?
Well, I mean, they were originally discussed as being angled to match what's out there, but, you know, I guess it can be flexible. You know, he's concerned about the trees.
Well,
The town's not.
Parallel parking on a designated spot like that is probably a safety issue, right? Because you're not gonna have access to both sides of the vehicle.
It would require probably having, you know, some kind of accommodation on the curbside. It's not the ideal situation. Maybe we can change the angle of the parking to make it less of an impact, but the fact we keep talking about the town's trees, it's the town's trees.
Don't go to the tree yet, but on the creating 2 designated spaces, there's either solution 1, the 3 spaces that are there now, gets us 1 striped out for non-use with 2 designated spaces, or 2 around the corner that are reasonably close, almost just as close as the ones out front. So close enough trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, you know, personally, I wouldn't recommend moving the spaces further away from the access to save trees that the town is not concerned about saving, but that could be an option.
Not to belabor the point, so I think I'm squared away at least on the parking choice. So the second piece becomes the tree. Is what, how many, so there's 1 tree, I think it's that giant one, right? The one I'm thinking of. He said the tree warden took a look at it and says it's not on like the list of, you know, trees we've got to save type thing. Is that because it's like not a special species of tree that is worth saving, and it kind of, in tree person's expert opinion, that's just not one you feel yourself to go after? Because the other part of it is the aesthetic and the community piece, right? Because it could be a perfectly good decision to make for tree expert world, but then you're gonna get, you know, people burning cars and stuff when you take down a tree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't normally get involved in that process. I think his comment was there's, you know, trees planted, you know, diagonal that are taking very well, and he would prefer to do something similar to that in that location. Again, my understanding is he didn't say the trees are coming down. He said he would evaluate it, but, you know, if he felt there was enough, that's typical when we do these types of projects. He'll evaluate during construction. If he feels there's enough of a root impact that it's going to kill the tree, then he would take it down, but that hasn't been determined yet. So, you know, we can.
Eric, can you get a few people together, and I know you don't like to meet again on this issue, but the tree warden and even an expert, outside expert other than our tree warden, and determine whether you want to put the spaces around the corner, a couple spaces on Church Street, and come back to us with a recommendation, or are you sick and tired of this issue and think we ought to be making a decision?
Well, I think, does the commission have my latest email, Denise? Okay, so, I mean, everything I think I needed to say was in the memo and the email as far as what our concerns are. I would not base your decision on the town trees that are subject to the town's discretion. If the town tree warden had come in and said, well, absolutely, we don't want to touch those, it's a different conversation, but that was not the conversation we had with him.
Said that.
Correct.
He doesn't think this one is worth.
Me personally, I think the best space for those are
It's a nice tree.
an extension of the existing spaces to the south. It puts them closer to the access, and it doesn't affect the existing town parking spaces.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Derek, I respect what the tree warden said, probably from the perspective of age and health. There was another big one on Garden Street that was pretty sick and they had to take it down. So I understand his point. Something that old may come down in the near future. And if you start disrupting the ground, it's probably going to help it get there quicker. I personally think it's important that we keep trees in this town, especially Old Weathersfield. I'm a resident of Old Weathersfield. I think they're a big asset to that landscape. I'd hate to see that tree be killed. If there's any chance, I'd be against it. Now, you said there's alternatives that you think are available that would not impact the tree. That's what I'm interested in understanding. And I'd be willing to make that kind of a stipulation if it's clear that there is an alternative. So can you explain a little better where the alternative would be? Because I'm trying to picture, save the tree, get the extra spaces, where would they be?
Let me just take a look at the
Do you need
plan.
the screen down, or?
I don't, I'll look at it here. I think they have it.
I'm going to use the old Robert's Rules of Order and provide a point of information. My engineer indicated that it is not possible to put handicap spaces on Church Street in a parallel manner. I just wanted folks to know that that is not something that the state is a fan of. Derek might have a different experience, but the land use planner said it's a no-go, which is why we stuck to the front.
Why is it a no-go?
I think it's something to do with you, because you have usually a staff member driving the vehicle that's like hopping out, going around, lowering the thing, and you need to have a landing place that is not the curb. So I guess it's, again, I'm not the engineer, but I'm just sharing what I was told by an engineer who I paid. I said, can we do that? Let's do that. And he said no. But I will add, George, that I offered the town to place standard spaces on that section of Church Street to replace the 3 spaces I was stealing. And therefore, I don't understand why that was ignored, but I was specifically told that was not okay.
Maybe it was, but maybe that was past tense.
I really don't know.
We'll look at
honestly.
it again.
Yeah, we've had many discussions, and that wasn't ruled out as not an option.
You got a new town manager, you can have another discussion.
Yeah, this is why we have this many meetings, because we just go round and round on the same things. We had looked at it, it was discussed as an option, they needed to come back with additional information, which they didn't do. The response was, we're not putting in any more parking. So that's where we've been since November, and why we're standing here in April, still talking about it.
So, I hate to press the point, but is there a good alternative to the front area that,
I think there's an option to, move the parking down, maybe change the angle of the parking, if that's a concern. But I would stress that the commission give direction as to what they want. So if you want other options, I would have him come back with other options. And don't leave it up to staff to work out, because that has not been productive.
understand?
Okay.
Mr. Gregor, before you leave, one question. On the west side of Main Street, between Church Street and Hartford Avenue, how many handicap spaces are there in that area? That's part of
West of
town?
Main Street?
That'd be on,
Oh, you're talking about
that'd be
north?
on the west side
Okay.
of Main Street, between Church Street and Hartford Avenue.
I don't know if there's any exist that right now. We do have an application in to do some intersection improvements there that will create some parking, handicap parking in that area. I don't think that stretch right now currently has any. I would say that we do have some parallel parking spaces located south on Main Street, on the east side of the road, that were put in front of existing businesses as part of an approval. So we do have that precedent in
But
town.
nothing in proximity to this particular place of business.
Yeah, just south on Main Street, there's a couple
And so the
of parallel spaces.
The proposal of the applicant was to take 3 of the currently existing public regular parking spaces that are located within a reasonable proximity to the front of his building, and basically convert those 3 public parking spaces into 2 handicap parking spaces. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Based on that, that means, elimination of one parking space for one regular vehicle. However, doesn't seem to be any other parking spaces for people with disabilities in that area. And his proposal does include accessible, essentially public parking relating to his place of business that conforms to the standards for the number of parking spaces for his business. It does to me seem like when it comes into the issue of fairness and justice to all the citizens of this community, including the disability community, that his is reasonable and just, and that the town's position lacks justice.
Well, we're requiring the same amount of parking spaces. We're just saying, build your own for your own development that's required for your development. Don't utilize our spaces. I get phone calls, police department get phone calls, town manager gets phone calls about parking, in other areas here, spaces yourself that you require. It's very minimal compared to what he should be building or would be building if he had a larger parcel. He'd be building that parking on his lot. We understand it's a small lot and there's limitations. But again, the cost of what we're talking about has been spent tenfold in staff time and taxpayer money having this conversation over and over again. So, a staff's opinion is it's do what you need to do for your approval, but don't take away from what we have, because we already don't have enough.
Thanks.
Okay.
Can I ask Mike a question?
Yeah.
May I make a quick comment first?
No, let
Yes,
me
sir.
ask you a
Then
question.
you're the boss.
You've been before us for quite a while. You're investing $1 million plus, including retirement in business, personal property, furniture, equipment, time, support staff. And before you now is an issue over a tree that you love.
Mm-hmm.
None of us want to take trees down.
Mhm.
You're before a community
Mm-hmm.
with support staff that are experts,
Mm-hmm.
that are giving you an option. Wait a minute, giving you an option to put these 2 handicap spots on with 80-70% confidence that the tree would survive. So you're going to hold up the option for us to continue this meeting with a community that is giving you, I think, a lot of latitude. We want to get this to bed. We want to finish this up and do it, and there's an 80% chance the tree will survive. There was a proposal one time for this to be, I think, a cul-de-sac, or a circle, a rotary. Those are still on the radar. So the 10-year master plan's coming up. You've gone way out of your way to get the Heartseed parking site. Is that correct? That agreement's in place?
It's contracted and assured, yes, sir.
So would you like, we could go till
I'm going to
midnight
answer
if
your
you'd like.
question with a question.
But yeah,
Is this town going to tell a developer that the fundamental aspects of the village, which makes people visit it, which is beauty and history and a quality of life are less important than one parking space and the hours of the staff, which incidentally, I will more than make up with the $50,000 a year projected tax income that the activation of this building will cause. So for that comment, I will say, do your job. All right, because we are all paying for it every day as residents in this town. So we should always do our job. And it doesn't matter how much time is spent, because we should do it right. And doing it right means preserving the tree that Kevin the turkey slept in. All right? It means preserving the tree that little kids hug so they actually can appreciate that there's trees there. Do you want them to hug a car? Because that's the other
I'm just
option.
asking if you want another 10 meetings, go put another 24
I
hours
mean,
into this.
I don't, but we're talking about one parking space.
And
The town is not losing
the tree
it.
would survive. The likelihood the tree would.
So where did that come from? The town tree, the tree expert reported back to myself.
It was suggested by one of my colleagues to bring another expert in to confirm that the tree might survive.
But it didn't happen. There's no 80%. That's a number that was just generated. I've never at the town staff, that's why we hire them. We hire building inspectors who adhere to the building code to make sure that I build a safe building. I will do so. But to change the character of the village is what you're talking about. This is not the Silas Dean. This is the village.
I thought you'd be before us on the right of way for extending the patio outside, or be before us on a variety of other issues. I'm quite surprised this tree issue is holding this up.
I am as well. I mean, I'm trying to do everything the right way, and that is to take care of people that live here, because I'm one of them. People that spend time in the village and that love this town because of it. It's the reason our property values are where they are. It's such an adorable town. They film movies.
But in concert with Mr. Lambruni's comments anyway, I think it would be more likely that most people would say, we're not negotiating this, the tree has to stay, you have to cut 5 handicap spots somewhere else. I've seen that happen in other communities.
Which is why I offered the town to put 3 spaces on Church Street, and yet I was told I could not receive an opinion of whether that was okay or not unless I provided a brand new survey.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll be honest with you, this has been a really harrowing process, and there's been a lot of inappropriate activity that's gone along the way. And I'm not trying to do anything that is not in the economic development study that was approved by the town. And so, if that's a document that our town has approved and therefore adopted, what is somebody like myself expected to do other than download it off the town website?
As a board member, I remember us specifically asking this to be revisited by the town manager, the engineer. I think due diligence has been given. Maybe you're not in agreement with that. Let's agree to disagree.
I think that our distance is not very far, and your colleagues have made comments as the opposite. I think as a community, it's our decision, all of us, to decide.
That's what we're here for.
Are we here for paving paradise and putting up a parking lot in the village, or are we into one space that is available to not be there out of 960 street spaces? You can make that call over one space, but I'm trying to do this so that folks can go in the front door the right way. There are other options, absolutely. I could put handicap parking in the back. I could absolutely do a lot of things.
I agree.
Yep.
George, any?
Why?
Pardon me?
Why is he lecturing?
No, let's
I think
not,
we understand the issue. Let's
let's not
listen to the public.
judgmental. I think at this point, we understand where everybody's coming from. Members of the public have been sitting here for 2 hours. We can take a little break, hear from the public, and then resume. So is there anybody from the public that wants to comment on this application?
Christina Surgeon, 16 Church Street. I think it's fair to say I've been sitting here a little while, here in the mumbo jumbo and the charm of words and everything in between. But I've got an 8-year-old that I have to take home, so I'm gonna cut this short. this issue about trees or not trees and parking or not parking is just, and this back and forth and the weeks going on debating about parking and about whatever else doesn't make any sense to me at all as a citizen that is in the historic district. I've watched, and I think that Mr. Kerr doesn't believe in compromise at all. In fact, I've gone on his Facebook page, and he said there that he's not willing to compromise. And I'll read what he said because it's just bizarre to me. He goes, "The town engineer and the town manager don't want me to put my handicapped parking spaces in front of the building. It was originally that town engineer's idea, but then they decided they wanted me to build brand-new spaces by moving the curb and paving the street, etc. The worst part about the plan is that to build the parking spaces would lead to the death of those gorgeous trees in front of the building. I'm unwilling to compromise on the location. People in wheelchairs shouldn't have to go in the back door. That is not at all what the authors of the ADA had in mind. Also, killing those trees is ridiculous. While working on the building, we've seen 2 different couples have their wedding photos taken there." So, end of quote. He pretties it up time and time and time again because of his unwillingness to compromise with other people. And the town person is here saying that he's willing to compromise with him. Others are here that are willing to compromise with him. But the reality is, he said it himself. He's not willing to compromise at all with anybody. So when you can't have a discussion with somebody who's unwilling to compromise with you, I mean, we've had issues of the porta potty people coming to pick up the excrement from the porta potty that he has behind the building, and they've been driving on our driveway and things like that. He's come with pretty conversations about he's going to build a whatever fence or whatever it is. Now he's saying that he's going to be building a garage that he's going to store his spelt grain in. That's obviously going to smell at some point. I don't care how lovely it will smell, because he'll pretty it up and say it's going to be a lovely smell and it won't bother you and things like that. So he's been saying all of this mumbo jumbo. And the reality is, it's a bag of BS. And I'm sorry to put it that way, but it is exactly what it is. And I'm just sick of it. I am just tired. And it just needs to stop. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public have any comments? Yes, in the back.
Commissioners, my name is Steve Kirsch, 65 Bailey's Lane. I don't live in Old Weathersfield, but I lived in town all my life. Some credibility because my wife and daughter have owned and ran Weathersfield Travel for over 30 years, and I didn't know this was on the agenda. I came for the garden. We've got an unbelievably unique place, and Martha has said it for the last 10 years, with everything that goes on in Main Street, and I know exactly what tree you're talking about, and I don't even live in the area. I mean, that's how this Old Weathersfield is special. And to keep that special is, I'm impressed. And the lady said he doesn't compromise. Guys, what he did and what he's agreed to do just on the odor and the garbage issue should trump a lot of what your conceptions are, because that's going to save an awful lot of issues. It concerns me that there has to be so many discussions, and let's not have the tail wag the dog here. We've got the plan that 99 out of 100 issues have been settled, and they fit right like a glove on the town plan. Here we have this one issue. Guys, there's no more perfect application that's going to come to you than this. And if you don't work it out like grown men or grown people, I don't want to be sexist, it's absolutely ridiculous. Thank you.
Anybody else? No, you, okay. All right, yeah.
My name is Spiro Caloris, 67 Hartford Ave, and also owner of 263 Main Street, Comstock Ferry. I just have a quick question, just because I don't have the information, and I'm kind of new to this process a little bit, is with the garage that goes right along our property line, I just want to get a little bit more detail on that, and I heard you say that you might be storing things in there, whether it be the grain or the garbage. Where, if you have any, dumpsters will they be? And if you do need to get dumpsters before you build the garage, will it be fenced in? Just because, I only asked that question just because it's in line sight of us well. So information I don't have, so I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Thanks.
And also if just what like the plan is to kind of take care of the amount of garbage that might happen from a business that size. It might be more than driving it to the dump. So I just want to hear what the plan is for that. Thanks.
Paul Brady, 1618 Church Street. I am the abutting neighbor. Members of the commission, thank you for your volunteering time, for sitting here every time this application is up. It's always a very lengthy meeting for no reason, but so back in the fall, the engineer's recommendation was that Mr. Kerr add parking spaces, handicap parking spaces. I don't want to throw any of my volunteering position around, but as the co-chair of the People with Disabilities Commission in town, I think he should be required to provide at least 2 handicap parking spaces for a business that size. You guys approved it, right? And I was at the meeting. I presented my case, both personally how it would affect me, but more so how it would affect the town. And I do remember specifically saying not to approve this application with that 2-year stipulation on the handicap spacing. It was a disservice to the town. Any business that would be that is required to put up an establishment in anywhere in Connecticut would be required to put in a handicap parking spaces. Now, as to why taxpayers such as yourself and me are required for him to then take public parking spaces, which are there, and then remove those, we're all saying only 1 parking space would be affected, but right now think of the system you have. It is not the best, but to some degree it works. I see grandmas coming out of their wheelchairs going over to Comstock Ferry, and for some reason it works at the current moment. You're going to move or possibly give up 2 parking spaces and for him to build 0, right? On top of that, most of his parking is all the way down at Hartford. Now, the reality of this is, I'll be completely honest with you, most of the patrons that are going to be drawn to his establishment will not be forced to go park at Hartford. They're going to park wherever they think there is a parking. They're going to park on Church Street. They'll park anywhere else. Yeah, you could put up signs, right? That currently happens right now in Old Weathersfield. That's what happens in Center Street, where Bryce put up signs. People don't follow signs. Human beings are lawbreakers by nature. That's what we do. We will go to the closest place because we want to save time. My time is valuable, so is yours. But you're sitting here tonight to listen to this. If I'm spending millions of dollars to renovate an old building, what's another 50 grand going to be in order to save my investment? You're an investor. We all are investors here. I invest. And if I have to protect my money, at the end of the day, spending $20,000 more, I'm going to do it. Okay? I was in front of the historic board several times. Wanted to change my 2 front doors. To me, I don't really like them. I don't think they're safe. But the compromise was I had to keep those doors, so I kept them. I paid $1,500 to restore them. And over 50 grand on the rest of the house. It's my investment at the end of the day. So why is this different? Why is it different? I love the trees. God knows I do. And I would not be, I'd be the first person against it if you said that he's going to cut the trees to build a parking space. But the reality is, Derek is right. He's a business owner. He should be required to provide handicap parking spaces. And if you guys don't think so, then I guess, like he said, you're not really doing your job. That's the reality of it. Your job at the end of the day is to protect land use in this town and to ensure that the use is in accordance to the town plans. He talks about the master plan and about 100 years of how this town looked. Well, 100 years ago, Weathersfield was not this densely populated. So I'm pretty sure people had places to park. And a matter of fact, 100 years ago, not many cars were around. That's true. People probably used horses and walked. It's a reality of it. So you guys approved this already. Let's stop having this conversation. At the end of the day, it's about what's safe and what's right for the town. So spend the money, put the spaces in, because we need them. If you come down there in the height of summer, no parking. So we need them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sir?
Good evening. Najib Habash, 101 Highland Street. Again, like 2 gentlemen before me, I didn't come here to speak about this issue. I'm here for Laura's Garden. However, in sitting here for 2 hours and listening to this debate, this conversation, I would like to voice my support for what Micah is trying to accomplish here. I think it's wonderful, the idea of reactivating a property that's been dormant, if you will, for 20, 25 years or however long it's been. Parking is always an emotional issue. We're always looking for the closest spot to wherever we want to go to. We're kind of lazy in that regard. We never want to walk. I will say that I am the parent of a child who has cerebral palsy. She's a quadriplegic, and she's also blind. She's in a wheelchair. Have to do everything for her. When we go somewhere, I have to get her chair out of the car. I have to put her in the chair. I have to push her. Honestly, it doesn't matter to me if the parking is right in front of the establishment or if I have to walk a certain distance, as long as I have an accessible path that's safe. That's all I'm looking for. And I want to commend Micah for one of the things that he brought up, and that was to have the entrance to his establishment being in the front of the building, so that my Alexandra, can enter that building with the same dignity and with the same equality that everybody else enters the building. And I do hope that you approve the application with whatever challenges you have to overcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. We want to take like a 5-minute break?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Yep, all right, so we'll take a 5-minute break, pick up the hearing at at that point, I'll ask if, again, if anybody in the public wants to say anything. If not, we'll have the applicant come back up and we'll pick up there.
Thank you.
I was looking for the number counts in 1927, that was Mason's building. I remember 1922 parking, I believe. I also wonder how many people. I tried to put them in chase, so. No. George, what this is, town manager. George. What is that? Go ask our engineer.
You guys good?
What's going on with maintenance too? So this is 335.
But again, that was,
He's
he's
got
not the town manager.
the basement, came up first.
All right, we will we'll start back up again. I'll ask one more time, is there anybody in the public that wants to comment on this? All right, come on up, please.
Again, Paul Brady, 1618 Church Street. I'm the abutting property. So, well, my apologies. I didn't see the revised plan as I got the letter literally a few days before Easter. So, I have some questions. So, I'll start with my first question from the original parking agreement which was approved back in November. So my question on this, because when it was originally mentioned, I hadn't seen it, and I had asked Mr. Gillespie for it. Never got a copy that was actually signed, so I just received that from Denise, so thank you. My question to this is, the expiration date on this parking agreement, how does this affect this business? If Heart Seeds, for whatever reason, based on what I'm seeing here, after the 5 years, decides, guess what? You're a bad tenant, we don't want you. What happens?
Oh, that was in the conditions. I think it's condition 13, I think, Denise, of the approvals.
No, condition 13 was the handicap spaces.
It was one of the 14 conditions. It did explicitly indicate the results. I just don't remember which number, so I apologize.
It's number 4.
Oh, way off.
So it essentially says if the agreement is invalidated or terminated for any reason that the loss in parking spaces is required, a new approval from planning and zoning would be required.
So how's that going to be enforced? Does anyone want to comment on that? If he essentially loses the agreement for whatever reason, right? So is he still allowed to operate? Or does someone from the town goes in to say, you know, you lost your parking rights, so you have to close your business until whenever?
I think the condition that Denise just read answers that question, that he has to provide us with replacement parking.
I guess, yes, sure, Mr. Roberts, he has to provide, but for that time period, right? Is there anything stating that for, if this was something that, let's say, took place tonight, hypothetically, tomorrow morning, would he be allowed to open his business? Or how would that, does there a time frame that he has to provide you that new parking agreement? How long does he have to provide you that parking agreement?
Well, it's a condition of the approval. If he isn't satisfying the conditions, the town would basically say you're in violation of the conditions of your approval, you know, cease and desist until such time as you have either, you know, rectified the problem or come in with alternative spaces.
All right, that's what I was trying to get to, if it was an immediate cease and desist. My other question, so I'm looking at the new drawing here where the proposed garage is supposed to be. There are 3 cars inside, right, in the drawing, but the applicant mentioned about storing garbage and grain inside, right? It looks to me like there's some type of concrete platform right here, which is probably the platform to bring stuff down to the basement. So how is the storage utilization of that garage for garbage and grain going to affect the cars parked in there? Because based on what I'm seeing here, there hasn't been anything cut out to show that there's adequate spacing for whatever the amount of grain that he plans on storing there.
Well, the applicant will answer that question when he comes back. It's not our application.
So for now, that's really what I wanted to bring to your attention. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? If not, Mr. Kerr, do you want to come on back up?
I'm not sure I got all of the specific questions, but I'll do my, oh, sorry, gosh. Micah Kerr, 553 Maple Street, Weathersfield. I'm not sure I got all the specific questions, but I'll do my best, and I'm open to them being re-asked if I miss something. Okay, the first speaker talked about my lack of willingness to compromise. I'm not willing to compromise on the Americans with Disability Act, and I'm not willing to compromise on cutting down a beautiful historic tree. I stand by the words I posted. Those are 100% facts, and I believe that I'm in the correct position there. I'm willing to compromise on everything else. That's why I sent emails to the speaker and her husband with my intent to open a business there. And I asked them what kind of fencing they would like, and I offered to build them any fencing they want. I offered them any feedback they want. As a result of that conversation, they asked me to propose a fence that runs along the north property line between Comstock and Fair and my property to stop folks walking through there late at night after they've been at Old Town or some other establishment. As a result, I've offered to build just such a fence to make it more difficult to do so. So my willingness to compromise has been evidenced by conversations with that family. And even further, before this meeting began, I let Paul know that my garage elevation design will be in front of the Historic District Commission in approximately a week's time for consideration and comment, just because it's a preliminary design, and I want feedback, and especially from my neighbor. I also offered the same to Spiro, who came over during that break. I am all for fitting in the neighborhood, which is why everything that I think I proposed is really in line with what the people of this town want. I could be wrong in that regard, and I'm aware of it. But my willingness to compromise has been evidenced at many times throughout this, but not for the ADA and not for those trees. And I stand by that. Second major thing is, that's a moot point. The second thing that I think just to answer to, it was Spiro from Comstock, from Heirloom Market, sorry. He asked a few questions about the garage footprint. I'm using the footprint of the building that was previously proposed and approved and deeded to the property via variance. I have, as it's deeded, I wasn't looking to try something new. I just figured we'd use what was deeded to make it easier for everyone so we'd have no headaches. I don't need a garage that's quite that big, but it seemed appropriate to use what was there. Determining the elevations and how it actually looks and functions, those aren't complete, and factually I don't need to do that yet. That's just in my 5-year plan. It's a site plan, and by design all site plans are supposed to be for what you think you will likely build within the next 5 years. Before I ever build that building, I will have to get approvals to do so, and it will have an entire interior layout and how we'll be using it. In the interim, the garbage receptacle, as was asked again by Spiro, and I'm just saying it because I don't want to butcher your last name, and I'm sorry, is that we had previously gotten approval for the dumpster on the property with the fence that matches the fence that I'm building for my neighbor, and therefore it will be hidden from his property. I'm also flexible with coming up with other ideas. If I'll send you those designs, and everyone here has that information, but I'm happy to do other things to make it less of an issue for anyone. It's, changing a fence. I'm building that fence. It's a custom fence that I'm building myself, so I can do things to make it work better for these folks. Also, all those fences will be planted with major wheeler honeysuckle, which grows up above the fence height, and it's a nice, constantly blooming red flower, which I don't think you can see on that, but it's in the color versions, so when I sent it via PDF, everyone should have that. The trash will be there. The spent grain, to answer, it's directed to both because Spiro asked about it, and then Paul, the neighbor, brought it back, Mr. Brady, sorry. The amount of brewing that I'm doing on property, we covered this quite a bit the first time around, so it's fair we have to bring it back. Because of the nature of the building, it only has an 8-foot ceiling in the basement. Brewing equipment typically requires very high ceilings to do any, we'll call it efficient brewing, which means larger batches. My 8-hour day of brewing beer will create as little as 15 gallons in my backyard, or as much as 1,240 gallons when I brew down at Cottrell Brewing, which is now closed, but when I was brewing batches down there. So the same amount of time creates a vastly different amount of product. This building won't allow me to do the large products. I have a 5-barrel brew house, is going to be the production equipment. It's drawn on the plans already and has been mentioned the last time, this time, what have you. 5 barrels at 31 gallons a barrel, approximately 151 gallons. I'm done talking. 150 gallons, and to make 150 gallons of beer, you're talking less than 500 pounds, probably a lot less than 500 pounds of grain. As a context, a grain is like a sack, like you would you've seen them. Just a sack of grain. It's like any other horse food or big bag of rice at the grocery store is the best way to describe it. Same kind of thing, because that's a grain as well. One batch of beer, fill up one of those, those blue 55-gallon drums that you often see in food services. You fill one of those with spent grain, and it sits in the basement until we bring it out. And so it's not a ton, it's not a ton, but it's not a massive amount of volume of spent grain, but it is very heavy. And so that's for the safety of the workers. That's why you use a scissor lift to get it up to the appropriate height so that we can load it in the back of a pickup truck or bring it down to the farm. So that's, I think that answers your question, Paul, and I hope it answers your question. The designation, there's a designated location in the basement in the northwest corner of the existing building. And then when we build the garage, we could conceivably move it out there so the farmer could access it more easily. But the reason for the garage is to keep it inside at all times. I don't want it out and about because, again, you have a business that faces the property and we have neighbors, and I don't want to have folks irritated and then causing me problems in running my business later on. It's a lot easier to spend a few bucks in designing the process to be odor-free. I mean, it's not odor-free, but to keep it away from the neighbors, to keep it away from passersby or anything like that. Let me just see the rest of the questions. Did I miss anything for you, Spiro?
The only question I have is, you answered my question about the dumpster right
Yep.
now, but when the garage is built,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anywhere on the print where the dumpster will go at.
Inside.
In the garage.
Yeah, because we'll have a lift, so we can bring it in and out as we need to.
Not for spent, for trash.
Trash as well. All the dumpsters have a forklift. They're forklift slots where you can just get under them, lift them. We would use a walk-behind pallet jack. They're pretty standard in brewing, and they're pretty affordable, and it allows us to be able to walk behind it and lift it up as necessary, so we can bring it in and out. So when we know that the garbage guy is coming, and again, Mr. Brady specifically asked that we don't do it first thing in the morning because his son's bedroom kind of overfaces our area, we'll have it be, and then we can have our staff bring it outside for the trash company we contract with. So, and the advantage of brewing is that we're often moving heavy objects, so we have the equipment to move those type of objects, and it's just if it's just part of the job, it just goes on the list of things to do every Thursday, or whatever day that is, or every day. So, Okay, was there another question I needed to answer for Paul? Okay.
You mentioned, at your previous application, you mentioned that you weren't going to be doing most of your brewing was going to be at an off-site location.
Correct.
So that's still in the plan, or?
Absolutely, I will never be able to use this as a high production location, again, because of the ceiling height, and realistically, because it's a village. And so that's why, there won't be big deliveries, there won't be, everything about this is about giving, for me and for my business, it allows for us to have more creativity and give a more varied product for our customers, which in craft beer is really where the business is at. If a beer is a success, that's when you can it. And so I wouldn't be doing that on site. I would be producing it off-site at a production brewery, which has the capacity, has a multi-million-dollar facility, and then I will can it there for distribution. More specifically, my plans include a property in Rocky Hill to do just that. But until that happens, I will be brewing with Thomas Hooker in Hartford, or Bloomfield, property line. So, and they have 40-barrel batches, which is, I think I used that number before, it's 1,240 gallons.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me of something that I almost overlooked, which was we had correspondence received from Robert Alden, 1178 Silas Dean Highway, Unit 204, writing in opposition. He's commenting on the ADA and parking matters, but he also specifically talks about the production of 40 barrels a week, 1,240 gallons of beer a week, the equivalent of 80 kegs of beer. How many delivery trucks does this business plan to add to Old Weathersfield? So that.
Yep. So that number's incorrect. Production on site would be approximately 20 barrels a week. That would be 4 batches a week. Typically, you would have the brewer work 4 to 5 days brewing and then cleaning and days off, right? So you brew 5 barrels a batch. It's possible to do more, but it doesn't make sense. I've said from the very beginning of this process, I would have a hard time brewing more than 1,000 barrels a year at that location. The additional beer, like I mentioned, would be brewed off-site. So those batches brewed at Thomas Hooker for my more popular, we call them SKUs, but my more popular beers, like it's called Jet Lag or Departure, shameless plug. Those beers would be brewed off-site and generally sold off-site, like Sammy's by right or whatever, he sells these beers, but I would be bringing kegs on-site, which is considerably less delivery than a typical restaurant would because I'm brewing most of my beer on-site. So in the context of how much delivery and how much, we'll call it operational traffic, I think is what that question is regarding, right? Like the delivery trucks. Again, because it's only a 5-barrel brew house and we're, throwing 10 bags at a time maximum into this, we're talking delivery vans, we're talking small box trucks with a lift gate, max. It's not like HDI pulls up in front of, pulls up on Church Street with a big delivery beer truck, and we won't be doing that. My delivery vehicle is a Toyota Sienna. It's a car anyone here might drive on a daily basis. When I buy dedicated delivery trucks, you very well may see them around other craft breweries. We use typically like a Ford Transit or similar, like one of the Dodge small miniature vans, because they hold plenty of beer for us. We're not InBev, we're not HDI, we're not bringing thousands of cases of beer around. We're just serving for our distribution a small number of locations and a much smaller volume, as it is a high-end product. It's not a mass production product. We create a high-end product for a high-end clientele.
Okay.
Chairman Roberts, if I may, can I ask the applicant a question?
Yep.
You're also planning on selling other spirits, right?
At this time, yes. The goal, what I want to do is, and again, it's want because I still have to go through the permitting process for this, so, TBD. The manufacturing brewing license allows me to make and sell beer. It also allows me to purchase like hard cider and sell that. I'm applying for a full bar license, which will allow me access to sell, if somebody wants, if somebody has like a gluten issue, I don't have to make them a gluten-free beer. They can have a gin and tonic if that's what they want. Actually, that probably has gluten, I don't know. I don't do the gluten thing, but.
So what you're saying is you'll be able to sell the same thing that Old Town Bar sells?
I would be able to sell the same thing that Village Pizza sells as well.
Okay. How do you plan on policing litter or
Are they,
people that leave your establishment with cans or anything?
well, the law is pretty clear. Litter is a crime, and it should be enforced a lot more than it currently is. Secondarily, when you have a staff, as we do, part of the daily checklist is almost always a walk-around. If you poll every business owner in every small town, I would almost certainly guarantee that there is a policing walk-around to make sure things look okay. The way my business looks is incredibly important to my clientele. And I'll reiterate, it's a high-end product. We are not in the business of selling a $2, Bud Light, no offense to the most successful beer in the country. We're in the business of selling a $10 6-ounce to 8-ounce pour of an 8%, craft beverage. So we're very rarely are we going to be saying, here, take a bunch of cans outside and play drinking games. It's not very rarely, actually never. But in terms of the property, there's currently no one policing it, so I will say that I can guarantee you there'll be a lot more cleaning than there's currently happening. I currently pick up anything I see out there whenever I come to the property, and we fully expect to have the staff or myself to continue to do that, if not more, so.
Well, thank you for that. One last question, Mr. Chairman, if you may.
Yep.
You are seeking a change of operational time for that inspection?
Pardon me, can you say that louder?
Are you seeking to change the operational time that was previously approved? You mentioned something about...
The customer hours, yes.
And what are the new hours?
The only change was not in the evening, because the commission made it clear the hours that they wished me to operate, and so I was happy to adopt those hours. What I'm proposing is to be able to open earlier, because we have, in my opinion, there's an identifiable need for another breakfast option, and especially a brunch option on the weekends. And so I wanted to make sure that we had the approval to operate those times. It doesn't mean that we're definitely going to, but I'm negotiating with a chef partner at this time, and it was an important point of information from that chef, because it's leaving a lot of potential revenue on the table for a relatively low impact meal time. And, it says 6 a.m., so it's not, but we can adjust that.
That's what I was trying to find
Yeah.
out. What was the specific time?
Oh, 6, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, could we visit the memo of Denise Bradley and maybe look at the 16 bullets?
Well, I was going to let Mr. Brady finish, then I was going to talk about this one, then I was going to go back to this one.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, a lot of talking.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that 6 a.m. I think you said that was for what, a soccer watch party?
Well, no, I said an additional personal reason. I don't want to mislead anyone. For me, that's another reason why I want to do it. Currently, about a dozen folks get together and watch soccer games on a Saturday during Premier League season, which it is currently. Typically, we're Premier League fans, but I would be open to like the Italian Serie A, depends on the club. Oh, sorry, I don't know. But, it's not a huge thing. It's just for those diehard folks who want to watch a game, not everyone pays for those channels. I intend to pay for those channels, and we really hope to have folks come by, because soccer supporting is very social. It's misery loves company is kind of what most fans say. So.
I am a soccer fan, and the only problem I have with that is that those games are really early in the morning, so are you planning on recording those?
6 a.m.
So at
Yep.
6 a.m. you're going to have a watch party?
I want to have the capability, but primarily I want to do so for breakfast. My main reason to do so is because I've been down there quite a bit, And when I go to try to find an egg sandwich and I can't, I get frustrated. And I had 2 egg sandwiches this morning, and I was really happy to be able to have them, but I wasn't in Weathersfield. So it's just as an operation, I think a lot of the other folks on right there on Main Street open that early. I don't think it's an anomaly, but if 6 is a specific sticking point for my neighbor, I'm willing to be flexible there. I'm happy to choose another time.
Not for a watch party. I mean, I'm a soccer fan.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a Manchester United fan.
Oh, now we have a,
Soccer folks,
you get it, but you get it.
I
Yeah,
know how that
yeah.
goes, so, I mean, I don't know, 6 a.m.
So usually only one team plays at that time slot on a given weekend, and so it's pretty rare. But, and I will say,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can we go back to the memos and focus on the
Yeah,
specific question?
Yeah, I think
If you
we'll be
gentlemen don't
discussing
mind.
the 6 a.m.
We're still at a public hearing, so
Yeah.
you're welcome to talk
Yep.
more afterwards. I'd like to get right back to the agenda.
There's this sideways or landscape or whatever it is memo dated today at 3:48 PM between essentially Derek and Micah with numerous colors. And just having looked at it, it seems like all of these things we've already talked about. Is there anything specific in here that we haven't talked about?
I don't think so, and I honestly, his last response, I didn't get a chance to read all of them or reply, but I think we did tonight. I don't, and I also, I mean, if this is an appropriate time, you know, I want to make it clear to the entire commission that I proposed to the town staff, Derek included, that I would be happy to straighten the curb that is angled on Church Street and put a couple spaces there, as it's not very intrusive. Those spaces would more than offset the one space we're losing. I've offered that multiple times, but, and Derek was open to it. He asked for some specific information, but it was, at the time, we were told that was not an option by the town manager. Now, my understanding is that we have new town manager starting, so I suppose it's an opening for that conversation again. And I don't, is that a fair framing of it? I don't want to frame it unfairly, but we have discussed it in the past as a concept. I think it's a good one, and I've been willing to do it since I first sent emails about it many months ago, about 5 months ago. So that was my solution, if you will, my compromise, and I hope that works, but I don't know. Hopefully we don't end up back here, because I thought we had a solution last time, you know?
Right. Yeah, and as Commissioner Homicki is alluding to, there's a memo that Denise issued that had 17 comments and questions. Micah responded to those comments, and then there's some additional correspondence following that, you know, that was all sitting here for us tonight. Do you have any kind of update on what all this is about, or whether he has adequately addressed your comments or not?
I mean, at this point, I probably, you know, I have not had a chance to respond to his responses.
Okay.
To my comments.
Yeah. And I think some of those were from Denise, and then some were from the contracted planner. And as his experience was in Meriden, I don't think he was aware that some of his comments were more for the review of Historic District Commission, so I noted that. But it's a conversation I'm more than happy to have with Historic District Commission, as they're responsible for things like what type of chairs I use. It's just not a zoning conversation in Weathersfield, and maybe that's just a town-wide thing, but, so those are I think the last 3 were specifically about the type of chairs that I was proposing, so.
Okay. So as we sit here right now, you haven't had a chance to review his responses that frankly none of us had a chance to review either.
That's correct.
Okay.
If I could reference page 2, Denise, of your April 13th, 22, you do reference 16 bullets, all I think that are under our watch. Friday, of your other questions are with the Historic Commission anyway, and I think, Mr. Chairman, if we look at that page 2, and with the proposed improvements, really focusing on the sidewalk, 1, 2, reconstructing the front steps, new handicap lift, front and side yard seating, which doesn't include the town right-of-way, split rail fence, new curb cut driveway, shallow box fence, 3-foot high split rail, dumpster issues we discussed, honeysuckle planting, replacement. On Church Street, new stairs and rear basement entry and fill of 3 basement windows and parking in 3 places in concert with our engineer's report, advocating, I believe, 8 potential, in the future, up to 8 potential parking places at different locations. If that's before us tonight, I think we have the opportunity to vote, unless we want to extend the discussion further into Denise's memo on page 4 and 5, where the questions and comments come into play.
There is a point of information about that. The 3 windows that it says are to be closed, it was 1 window. I think that was a typo.
Well, I'm just saying this is an example for us to
Yes.
put before us tonight if we want to expedite the process.
Yeah.
I think the majority of the responses do relate to what would ultimately be the Historic District Commission approval. There are just, I would say, 2 or 3 that are outstanding, and they mostly relate to the handicap parking in the front that, I think we need some further clarification on.
Okay.
So Denise, just to be clear, so this is on April 13th, 22 memo, page 2.
Yep.
All the dot points on the proposed improvements, that's what we're addressing, or we're on now. Which ones fall under HDC versus P&Z? Do we know?
Aside from the new curb cut driveway with the sidewalk construction, the 6-space bituminous parking lot, the proposed dumpster enclosure would be both commissions. They really do not look at the specific plantings called out on the plan. The catch basin top replacement, they would not review. I think both commissions would be looking at this infill of the basement windows, and then planning and zoning would be the 3 spaces in the proposed garage. But HDC does have that pending before them at their next hearing as well.
Okay, and then there were some changes, I think, on the, remember, on front and side yards with 18 tables and a split rail fence. Those were changed, those were new, correct?
No.
No?
In the previous plan, a lot of the seating was in the town right-of-way, so they revised the location of the seating and the tables.
Okay,
And the fence.
and then the fence changed, right?
It's just location. It was asked to be moved to our property line because we were trying to lease or buy the land from the town.
Right, and we didn't want to
Yep.
approve something that was contingent on something.
Yeah, we'll try that later someday.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about the front and side lawn, that's it, and the split rail, that's all historic district?
That's right.
Okay,
And they've already approved that.
got it.
In his response to my comment number 3, he is indicating that HDC will approve the exterior lighting, which is in fact correct. They will do the specs of the lighting, but we're looking for a photometric plan showing light spillage off the property.
And my mechanical engineer will be providing that if we're approved. Yeah, I want to kind of make sure the only real light change on the exterior of the building kind of at this time would primarily be for a future garage. So I don't think I need to provide that, but if we are going to do that, it very well might change the light specifically over the man door that is south facing. And so that would affect the lumens, et cetera. And there are no historically accurate lights in the four-sided lantern variety, which has previously been built there. So I have to work with HTC to make sure that they support the product I'm calling out, and then we'll bring it to you guys for the light approval, and my engineer will do what he does. And I'm contracting with, I think it's, I want to say Aztec, but it's like AZEC Engineers of Hartford, just up Weathersfield Ave. He's a resident, I think, of town.
And then, so it sounds like all those bullet points were addressed, and then the change of business hours is new, right? I don't see that in the.
Yes, sir.
Yes, they're proposing to change all of the start times to 6 a.m. from 10 a.m.
Oh, 10, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
The only outstanding comment really that I feel, has to be addressed is the issue of the 2 handicaps, so that would be number 15.
Okay. All right. I guess at this point, I'll kind of pull the commission. Do we want to kind of take what we have here tonight and try to resolve it, or do we want to continue it and make sure that there's no ambiguity on any of these things so that we have the finite list? It sounds like, basically what we're down to is the handicap parking and possibly discussing the hours. I don't know, what else, does anybody else feel like?
I think there's also a discussion concerning, additional parking spaces on Church Street. Mr. Kerr said he'd be willing to put something there. I think we're kind of losing some parking in the back there with the garage. Ultimately, we will. So if he's willing to do something like add some parking spaces along Church Street, we ought to consider it.
And I think we need to approve it, don't you, Mr. Chairman, or not? Or just, no? That parking?
Or which parking?
On Church Street that he's talking about.
Yeah, I think
That would require implicit approval, and I think, just to back up Derek, that if we don't have implicit approval of anything parking, like, I hope you agree with me, we really want it to be like locked down, right? So we don't have to, unless you want us to go back and work it out with the new town manager, it would probably be easier just to tell us what you want.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the word would be explicit, just so that we're
Thank
not
you.
here guessing for
Yes.
another 6 months what it was
I
that we had
apologize.
in mind. Yeah. All right, so, I mean, if that's the universe of things that we have to decide, do you feel comfortable that we can do that tonight?
Kind of late. I'd prefer that we take some time and just digest all this material. There's a lot of material here.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I think the only thing that I would really want to have explicit for next time would be where any additional parking spaces on Church Street or elsewhere would be located.
Right.
Just so that he doesn't spend time saying, I'll put them here, here, and here, and then we find 5 reasons why that doesn't work, because frankly, it's not a propitious location for handicap spaces. It would just be kind of for compensatory spaces if we're looking at converting any of the ones on Main Street into, from general to handicapped or otherwise.
The location that we had previously discussed in committee was directly west of the proposed driveway. So that, because that's where there's currently a narrowing of the road on a very long angle, and the proposal was to straighten that and then do a more of a,
Kind of a cut-in?
yeah, I can't, clearly my words are no longer my friends, so
Yeah.
tighter angle.
Yeah, I mean,
Would that be up to 8 parking places, potentially?
That, no.
probably be,
No, it would be
I'd kinda
maybe
like to
3.
see it, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think.
To replace the 3 on Main
I think
Street.
you should see it, what's possible.
When do you go before the Historic Commission?
So it's the next meeting, which is, I think it's a week and a day, if I'm correct, we are not an official votable, but we are informal to get feedback on every item.
Okay.
Right? So then I can go back to them, I think it's May 6th, I believe I was told, is the date I'm going for approval.
So you'll have additional clarification on where they stand on some of these issues? Hopefully.
Certainly,
Yeah.
but some of them are also sort of like, they're almost like red herrings, like the
Agreed.
garage elevations don't matter at all, they won't matter for 3 years. There's no way I can afford to build that garage after all the other stuff we're having to do. It's been a pretty, there's been a lot of expense that we weren't expecting up front. But yes, absolutely, there are a lot of things going to be covered there that should hopefully clear up some of the things. But I think it's not related to the parking, which has been our primary conflict, so.
I think of the 16 bullets that Denise has and then the 17 other questions that were open, we've clarified a lot of these, so we could refine it and revisit this at the next meeting.
yeah.
I think,
Really, and focus exactly on what we're approving and what we don't need to discuss.
going back to the parking in the front, it's really unclear. Tony, and I don't know if it's 80%, but I think it's better than 50% chance that the tree will survive. We just took a quick look from an aerial view here on Google Maps, and it seems pretty far. And I don't know how much root damage you would do to that tree at that distance by adding 2 or 3 new spots to create 2 handicap spaces. So I think we need some better guidance from some experts.
An expert.
Yeah, an
Maybe
expert.
even an expert outside of the town.
Yeah, I would suggest that we try to save the tree, obviously, because I think it's important to save the tree. But if, in fact, the impact is minimal, then I think it's an easier decision on our part. I'd like to know more about that tree and the location. And Derek suggested, too, that it doesn't have to be as sharp an angle as is currently laid out in the road conditions as they are. You could modify the angle somewhat to minimize the impact that you have on the roots. So I think we need to know a little bit better about that. Maybe
Before-
we can get someone to tell us that.
Well, not to belabor this, I mean, I thought we approved changing those 3 spots to 2 handicap spots in November.
Yeah.
That was the way I went to bed that night. And then I woke up and found that wasn't what we had done. So it is what it is. I mean, and trees die. That's what they do. They grow, they die. Not meaning that I want to expedite its ultimate demise, but, stuff happens. And, if that tree goes, there'd be a great location for 8 new parking spaces that the town would build. And frankly, I'm kind of, not meaning to pile on anyone in particular, but I'm kind of frustrated that we thought we had resolved this and apparently we didn't. And the whole conversation about having the applicant provide the handicap spaces when, as a practical matter, if he's going to be providing the spaces anywhere, it's going to be on town property, either here, or here, so I'm kind of not as wound up about it as I would be if, the issue were, he didn't want to take down a tree on his own property and put in the parking spaces, because they're going to be on town property regardless of where they're located. And we just have to do it in kind of a prudent way.
Well, we have different recollection of that night, obviously, because I went to.
Well, I was sober.
Well, I was drinking coffee all night. It was a long meeting.
Yeah.
I remember what I thought we agreed would happen was that he would work it out with the town engineer on finding a new location, not using existing roadways and existing parking. And the discussion was at that time, was that the town was gonna be doing some improvements there
Yeah.
anyways, and so they were gonna incorporate the additional spaces in those improvements. That, to me, implied he wasn't gonna necessarily use parking spaces that were there. Now, what's happened is the town is not going to act and do anything, so all the cost falls on the applicant. That's what I think the debate is coming down to. And then there's the additional question is, will it impact the tree? Which is an important question. So that's why I'm suggesting we really need to know about the tree. And it will certainly help me decide if I should vote one way or the other, depending on the tree.
Okay.
We did discuss those specific 3 spots as it was on my proposal that I submitted, the official proposal as it was specifically identified. It was only in committee that there was any further discussion about it. I've watched that meeting, unfortunately, about 3 times. And it was relatively, the words that were used in the public were different than what were used once it went behind closed doors. So it's unfortunate because it was just the language then led to interpretation. So I think, regardless of people's intent, I think the intent was to approve the application, and I could be wrong because it was unanimous approval, but the details of how we worked out that handicap parking wasn't important per se to the commission as long as it was provided. And so I think to avoid all of this discussion, to avoid anybody looking at the tree further, just let me put the 3 spaces on Church Street to supplement the 3 spaces that I'm removing from Main Street. That's what I
suggested initially.
Yeah, that's what I suggested as soon as we left last time.
I don't know if you'll do that either. I'm not sure if that will work that out, so we have to be very explicit.
I've offered it before, I
understand
offer it
that.
again.
We have to be very explicit on where they're gonna go. Are they reasonably located? Can it be done? If I knew tonight that you had agreement with the town engineer to add 3 additional spaces, everybody shook their head and said yes, on Church Street, I'd be okay.
What if it was 2?
Well,
Because we don't know what'll fit
yeah,
there.
but I'm just saying, yeah.
Right there, I mean, we don't know.
It's again, a very vague picture in my mind. I don't know what's possible on Church Street.
Yeah.
I'm glad you offered it. That's.
It's a 37-foot wide collector road. It's 4 lanes wide. It's capable, it's the same as Route 3 in terms of its roadbed. So it's a different road than all the rest of the roads in town. It's designated as such by the state.
Does Denise have enough info to
I think.
focus on the 8 to 10 items that need to be voted on next
So
meeting?
do we continue this?
Yeah.
You want a
Motion to continue to May 3rd, 7 PM.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
You had something?
I just one thing, I don't want to lose sight of, I have the utmost confidence the parking and the tree will resolve themselves. The 6 AM start time in the business hours, I want to just make sure that doesn't fall off and that we're carrying that forward.
No, I think that's worthy of discussion.
Okay, fine. I'm good.
There might be a non-soccer fan who lives within a half a mile of there. All right,
Well,
so the motion's been made
everyone's a
and
breakfast fan.
seconded to continue the hearing to May 3rd at 7 PM.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, thanks. All right, next, 3.3, 824 review Laura's Memorial Garden at Mikey's Place.
Whatever she wants, I support it.
It's still good evening, so Kathy Bagley, Parks and Recreation Director for the town of Weathersfield, and also with me are the architects and designers for the Laura's Garden plan. And what we're here tonight to let you know about is that this project came to the Park Board, and they recommended Laura's Garden to the Town Council. So we're here tonight for an 824 review. So we're going to go over quickly the plan for the garden, which is going to be located in Mikey's place. And I believe you did get a little packet that showed the location in Mikey's place. And we'll give you a very brief, a couple of pretty pictures of what it's going to look like, and then if you have any questions. And I'd ask Randy to give you a very brief, again, we'll try and be quick here, of what it's going to look like.
Thank you, Kathy.
Time.
Oh, no,
We're not proposing any parking. But my name is Randy Collins. I'm a landscape architect with Beta Group. As Kathy had stated, the Memorial Garden is going to be placed adjacent to Mikey's Place in Standish Park. Generally, the concept is to develop a hardscape that's surrounded by planting area. The concept is in honor of Laura, for Laura's Garden, and it's meant to be based on the shape of a Nordis shell, which is really inspirational and stands for grace in both growth and development. The design is a hardscape, as I said, surrounded by a berm with plantings. The plantings are meant to be such that attract butterflies. The hardscape is contemplated to be a bluestone area. Also contemplated is a granite bench that's tucked into the slope. As you can see in the rendering, there's one long granite bench. It has 3 wood pieces that are set into the granite bench, seating areas. And then there's a smaller second one that's tucked behind the tree, which you can't see. It's within the hardscape area. That will also be a granite bench with a wood top as well. And also being proposed is a small fountain. Now, the fountain isn't really meant to be a splash fountain. It's going to be something that bubbles up. Water comes up through the center of a piece of granite, will cascade down the face of the granite, then go into a catchment area. So you could touch it, but it's not going to be a pool or anything like that. I think that's a pretty good overview. The plants have yet to be selected, all the materials have yet to be selected, and we're currently working with a landscape contractor to establish the care and maintenance. What we have been discussing with Kathy is that the same kind of maintenance that town provides for Mikey's Place would be provided here, and anything additional would be part of the foundation's responsibilities.
Roughly how big is that?
It's about, say, 45, 48 feet wide by about 38, 42 feet deep.
Is the fountain or the water item recirculating, or will water be supplied to it?
It's proposed to be recirculating at this point. That's what we're looking into, yes.
What about the upkeep and maintenance of this? Kathy, how will this be done?
In terms of taking care of the garden, is that?
Yeah, how will that, I mean, looks great.
They'll mow it twice a year, like every other town facility.
How do we keep it up so that it looks as good as this picture?
Well, that's where the foundation is actually going to enter into an agreement with a landscaper to actually maintain the garden itself.
Okay. Is that a local landscaper?
It is a local landscaper. As a matter of fact, we met with them today. It's Sanzaro.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So, and we're also talking about having them construct the garden as well.
Yeah, okay.
If I can also interject, Najib Habash, Beta Group. In addition to Sanzaro, we've had a couple of other not architects, landscapers in town, local, who've come forward and they want to be part of this. So it's very encouraging to see the community coming together, not just through the landscaping companies, but with others who want to do something to memorialize Laura's memory, who was a lifelong resident of the town and who was very much beloved in this town.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions?
Probably want to mention the lighting.
Oh, the lighting. So what is also being proposed is, and you'll see it, it'll be easier to explain it with the visual, that on that granite bench, that seat bench that we're proposing, is that there'll be a channel cut into it with an LED channel that will allow that to be illuminated. The intent is not to have a bright illumination. It's really just to provide a little sense of safety and security in the evening hours. It'll probably shut off when other lights shut off within the park area, and it's really just to provide a little extra enhancement and a little expanded time of use for the contemplated nature of that terrace and the seating in the planted area.
Kathleen, I think it'll be a nice addition to Standish Park, and in that particular corner of it. I think it adds something going out toward, the upper right-hand corner, and I think it'll work well. And glad to see the contributions like this to the town and how you encouraged it and helped us come to the point where it's viable.
We've come this far basically on the shoulders of Kathy.
I'm sure you did.
No, there's no doubt about that.
Except the foundation's raising all the money.
No, this looks good. If nobody has any other questions, does somebody want to make a motion to give a positive referral back to the town council?
Make such a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right.
Good luck with
Thank you very much.
Nice job.
Thank you.
I feel like you were harder on me, I'm joking.
We have some awards to hand out here.
You're not going to get one of those either.
I did not get into this with the public enemy number one.
All right. Have to put Joe's award back on the shelf.
We'll give it to him next time. So we have a length of service award that was given from the CFPZA presented to Tom Dean. It was actually during their annual conference in April 2020. So this is a little bit late, but congratulations.
Yeah.
I remember receiving the notice of the notification, or the thing, I think just before March 13 of 2020. And that's the date when the country closed down.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service. We appreciate it. And then we have a training certificate for George. He's already gotten 2 lifetime achievements, so he can only get training
Well, I didn't
certificates
turn
from
in.
now on.
Didn't other people get one of these, or was something?
Yeah, I
else?
did too. Or
Did you
I've
get
Joe
I've got a
Hammer also got
photocopy.
one.
Yeah, I thought Peter got one.
I gave it to him.
Yeah, I didn't turn the thing in. I guess I just can't be trained.
Yeah, so that I-
All right, next item, April 5th minutes. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the April 5th meeting minutes.
Wait a minute.
Some changes, George?
Yeah, I had a couple errors in it, but I don't know if they're serious. Hold on. Look, I think they're just not. Maybe not. Excuse me. for taking some time here. No, I'll go second it. It's something else.
All right, motion by Peter, second by George. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Let's see, what else do we have here? Staff reports.
I have nothing additional to report this evening.
All right, thank you for that. Public comments on general matters of planning and zoning. I don't see any public. No correspondence. We have anything upcoming at future meetings?
The carryover for Boondoggle. There is an application coming up for 161 Main that's currently pending before the Historic District Commission. They were continued, so they do have to obtain their approval first. So I don't anticipate that coming until the middle of May.
Which one's that? That used to be the House of Images? Oh.
No, it's across, it's next to Larissa Lake's existing salon. It's on that side.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happened to Starbucks over in the Berlin Turnpike? I heard that was coming in over there. Is it still being considered something?
Yes, yes.
Oh, it's just taking time to get something in
They
there.
needed to obtain a variance for a front yard setback.
You know, it gets that first and us.
That's right. They have gone through design review, though.
Oh, where is it located?
It's the Atlas Tile Plaza.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else? If not, people can actually feast their eyes on Paul Thompson over there for the first time. Tenure on the
Paul.
commission.
Good to see you, Paul, in person.
Does
Do I
it-
get a speech or something?
Yeah, right. You have to sing your high school
Sing a song, that's
song.
right.
I'll get you a real nameplate.
All right. All right, if there's nothing else, someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.